We are so excited to welcome you to our Connection series. We are bringing industry leaders together to share a vision of the future of technology in the home. We hope you join us in May as we gather again for impactful sessions with insights from industry leaders and best-of-class research from Parks Associates analysts. Nothing beats the knowledge, conversations, and community that come from meeting in person. Throughout this year, we will gather and share Parks Associates' latest research on smart home devices and solutions for consumers. We survey 10,000 broadband households each quarter to provide the most reliable and accurate view of the market. The connected home has evolved from a high-end concept toward a mass market opportunity with incredible revenue potential. Thank you again for joining us at Connections.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our next sessions in the Connections virtual series. I'm Elizabeth Parks, President and CMO of Parks Associates, and excited about our sessions today focused on new market segments, consumers, and the smart home. We're going to be sharing some of our research data and also hearing from some of the major players in the industry talk about where expansion is coming from in the smart home industry. We have a special session this morning sponsored by Alarm.com focused on the demand and interest for solar solutions, including the opportunity for security dealers and installers. Then Jennifer Kent, our Vice President of Research, will present some of Parks Associates' data, our surveys from tens of thousands of internet households annually that we do. She will also host a panel discussion about new buyers, and we'll be back together to talk more about our research and also what we learned at Smart Energy Summit a few weeks ago. Finally, I'm going to host the last session, continuing the conversation around market growth and specifically about the channels consumers are buying these products from. I want to send a special thank you out to Alarm.com, really a powerhouse player in the smart home and security space, for their support of this session and our events and research. We will be co-locating our Connected Health Summit in May with Connections, the premier Connected Home Conference. This is our 27th year to host Connections, and we see health and home coming closer together. This also aligns with our research work that we're planning for the year. And so welcome you all to consider joining us in May in Frisco. Also, if you're interested in speaking, we have speaker invitations going out, so please be sure to submit to speak. These events are all part of our event series at Parks, where we're bringing industry leaders together from different areas of the connected home ecosystem and sharing our research and visionary insights. But our core business really is market research, and this is when I want to start today's session to help set the stage for the next discussion, which really is about the smarter home and the role of solar and security. We're going to be talking about strategies that integrate solar, security, and smart home, and how this combination can lower attrition, deliver energy savings, and create major customer stickiness. So I've got an awesome group from the industry who are going to join me in just a few minutes, but first I want to highlight some of Parks Associates' data. I want to make sure we know what we're all talking about. Solar is the focus of this conversation, but it's part of a broader category called distributed energy resources. And this includes any device or system that can be controlled by a utility. Effectively, these assets can help understand how energy is being consumed in real time, and also creates a two-way relationship with energy in the future when you consider storage solutions being also attached. Parks Associates research shows that solar adoption is now at about 7% of internet households in the US. This is research from our survey work of 10,000 internet households. And for context, 1% of internet households is a little more than 1 million households. So 7% equals about 7 million homes that have solar panels. This is out of 112 or 114 million households in the US with internet. Lots and lots of opportunity for growth here. And where consumers are buying these products is really split, meaning it's any of these companies' opportunities to introduce and sell this next generation of solutions in the home. The security industry is in a prime position given the other services they sell and offer to consumers. Also, the ability to integrate a system together between security and energy is part of really what we've been talking about for decades. This vision of leveraging automation for whole home controls and experience. And all of this is another step to that end. Generally, though, we see some good drivers in place for the growth of energy solutions. Certainly lots of attention in the area in general for consumers being environmentally conscious, a lot of investments coming from the government, and overall general trends towards more reliance on technology and consumer expectations around what it can do for them in their home environment. At the same time, we also see barriers as well, and the cost of some of these solutions will be a big barrier, but the biggest barrier right now with smart home devices in general is not understanding the value proposition. So if consumers don't understand the value proposition, no matter what the price, they're not going to buy that product if they don't think it has value. The housing market also is going to play a big role for solar installation as well as security services, as moving is one of the biggest triggers for buying a service or switching services. So we're going to see a lot of changes, I think, in the next few years as the housing market cools off. And finally, I want to mention the segment of households who own these products. The people who own security systems also own solar panels. This is a group that understands the value of a system, the benefits of the service, and the professional services that come along with them. Given the expense of solar panels in the $20,000 to $30,000 range or more, including storage, it's really important to approach a segment who already understands technology and the value and understand their perception so you can extend it further to more mass market play. So now, with that being said, I'd like to bring in our amazing group of speakers today. We're going to talk about the benefits of smart home and security solutions integrated with solar, how consumers are responding, and how the customer is getting approached, and finally, how quickly the market is going to grow. I would like to start off with Sean Berry, Vice President of Strategic Sales for Alarm.com. Sean, thank you so much for your support of this session. If you could, go ahead and introduce yourself and Alarm.com.
Great. Thanks for the invitation, Elizabeth. My name is Sean Berry. I've been with Alarm.com for over 10 years. I oversee the strategic sales division where we create smart home programs in vertical markets, such as the builder sector, healthcare, and the topic for today is solar. So that's another area that we are seeing a tremendous amount of growth in. Essentially, we assist Alarm.com service providers by promoting new technology integrations in these verticals, and we also develop industry best practices while providing a seamless, rollout strategy for these new enterprise customers. So again, very excited about being here and looking forward to the conversation today.
Great. Thank you so much. Brendan, thanks for joining us. It's an honor to have you. If you would go ahead and share a little bit more about your role in Trinity Wiring and Security Solutions.
Sure. Thank you, Elizabeth, and good morning, everybody. Very excited to be part of this discussion today as we look at the solar opportunity in our industry. We've been in the security space for just about 20 years, and we really focus on delivering our customers value as new technology continues to be introduced in our space. We have a very loyal base of customers that depend on Trinity to meet their needs and to keep their homes safe and efficient. We love the opportunity as we have helped them in the energy management space with the introduction of smart thermostats and better managing energy costs there. We felt that solar is a very, very important part of what will be the continued expansion of a smart home as we grow forward, not only delivering additional value to our clients, but also helping to present the solution as a consultant in a professional way, maybe versus that of what has gone on up until this point. So very excited about the opportunity to continue that discussion here this morning.
That's great. And that consultative role is going to become really important as the environment gets more complex for consumers to understand, and they have so many choices as well. So thanks for joining us. Clint, we're so happy to have you join us today. We've been reading all sorts of things about Nomo. So go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself and the business.
You bet. Thank you, Elizabeth, and hello to everybody. Happy to be here and be a part of the conversation. So I'm the CEO and founder of Nomo Hub. We've been in business for close to 4 years. We are a software platform that connects sales organizations with solar installers across the country, and are really the easy button for companies that want to add solar to their product mix. And we can do that in a variety of ways, through either receiving leads from companies that just want to partner and hand off a customer and to have a trusted solar experience from sell to install, or companies that even want to get involved on the sales side. So happy to be here and appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, it's nice to see you again. Green Marbles plays a great role here, and so we're excited to have you join the conversation. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about Green Marbles and some of the things you're working on.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here too. So Green Marbles is a nationwide enterprise solutions integrator that helps customers, specifically utilities, multifamily, and home builders, deploy solutions in the smart home, solar, EV charging market. So we partner with best of breed established brands like Alarm.com, seeking sustainable, quick go-to-market solutions by tying together and expanding ecosystems of products and services. So I'm director of product development for Green Marble. So I am responsible for designing these solutions that we launch. And prior to this, I worked in the utility industry. Specifically, I was at Salt River Project for about 15 years. I designed customer programs. So I had the familiarity of working with hardware and software developers. So it's good to be in this space on the other side.
Great. Well, we're excited to have you here and bring in that perspective, and we'll probably be tapping into some of your experience there at SRP. Unfortunately, our Amon isn't able to join us to bring in that utility perspective, but Jason, I know you're going to be able to do that for us today. Let's go ahead and start about some of the general trends that we're seeing in the industry, especially in the selling process, the installation, and then where this crossover point is coming in with security. And Sean, I want to start out with you. You guys have some amazing things going on at Alarm.com. Can you catch us up to speed about what's been happening maybe over the past couple of years and how we've gotten to this point now where, you know, solar really is this great offering that it can be connected into the security solution mix?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I would say that kind of to summarize it, it's really broken down into three major changes over the last 2 to 3 years. So behind the scenes, we've been working on some new integrations that I'll talk about. We have a new solar program and some new partnerships. So on the integration side, you know, Alarm.com has really expanded deeper into our energy services segment. And, you know, as you know, from Alarm.com's 20 plus year history, we've expanded from security to home automation to video and into energy services, where we first connected with a smart thermostat with a lot of different providers, world-class brands. But, you know, over the last 2 to 3 years, we are now working with SolarEdge and Enphase, which are inverter companies that allow us to see the solar production of the home. So once that integration was complete, we expanded and officially launched our new solar program last June. And so that program includes Solar Academy training for our dealer network. We have free solar service plans for our service providers to extend to the customer base. And then we have the solar lead service that provides and manages really the whole solar customer experience on behalf of our service providers. And that really leads to the last component, which is new partnerships. Outside of SolarEdge and Enphase, we wanted to make sure that our service providers could provide world-class solar experience for their customer base at a very competitive price. So Alarm.com has integrated and formed a partnership with Nomo. And as Clint mentioned, you know, their software really does a fantastic job of managing all the moving pieces around solar and extends full transparency to our service providers with Net Promoter Score top of mind. So, you know, all these changes, these three major things are really bringing together two sectors in the space, both the security sector and the solar sector, and we're providing value for both industries. So a ton going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, if we look at what's going on with the security dealers, you know, everybody is looking to capture that next subscriber and the next buyer of really whatever solution they want, whether it's security, energy management, some of these home automation pieces that come along with that. So, Brendan, can you maybe share with us a little bit about how your business is shifting in terms of the consultative selling process, if this is the way you all have always been selling security solutions, or you know, you really are working hard to, of course, educate your own team and then be able to share that with consumers so they can make an educated decision?
Yeah, that's a great point. Elizabeth, we've always taken the approach of a consultative resource for our customers. We work with a lot of new home builders, and they value when we're an extension of their experience, of their process. So our approach from day one has always been consultative, and solar has become a real focus for us. And in working quite closely with our very trusted partner, Alarm, we see the opportunity to not just respond to today's market, i.e., you look at what's going on with Vivint and their energy company merge or acquisition, and then, of course, ADT. There's some natural steps in smart home security and energy management, energy generation coming together. Product manufacturers like JCI already have the technology built into their panel. So I think it was a natural step for Alarm to continue to fill the gap of what really belongs in a smart home solution. And the opportunity to deliver that value to our customers, we think is going to be very powerful as we grow forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to maybe just follow up on the new home segment. Can you share a little bit about the builder mindset as it relates specifically to adding solar and energy storage solutions?
Sure. The builders are at a position where obviously their marketplace has tightened up as interest rates have risen. So they're looking to differentiate themselves from other players in their space. And their customers are asking about the pre-wiring for EV charging. And then that's a natural stepping stone to battery storage, and then obviously generation of energy, i.e. solar. So they're looking to integrators and trusted partners like Trinity to help them through the understanding of how they should approach this space. And I think it's going to be very valuable for security integrators today and growing forward, that they familiarize themselves with this, and that they're there to support not just their clients, builders, as well as residents and commercial application. We're also a commercial integration company, and we're starting to see percentages of new construction that require X number of parking spots to be EV, to have EV chargers. Well, the next discussion is there availability or possibilities to add some solar panels to this equation so that we can be more efficient in the delivery of these services? So I think it's coming together, and I think as an integrator, it would be very wise for us to put on the thinking caps and get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And that EV play is really interesting there. The demand that might be coming as a result of EVs being on the road, and then consumers also, their mindset maybe shifting into storing energy and being able to use it differently. It does bring up all these federal incentives that have been flooding the market, and what this means both for home builders, for the security channel, for HVAC. And so, Clint, I want to come over to you here with this next question and see, what do you think is going to happen with all this money flooding the market, right? And we've seen this before back in 2012, 2013, lots and lots of money came into the market. And a lot of things ended up happening. A lot of things maybe didn't as well. So would love your perspective on that.
You bet. Yeah. Well, yeah, look, so that we can be clear on what incentives are out there. The IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act that was signed by Biden last fall, late August, mid-August, extended the tax credit. So extended the tax credit, the 30% federal tax credit for solar, and really a lot of energy efficient products kind of fall into that mix as well. But for solar, for purposes of this conversation, for the next 10 years. So we have a 10-year extension of a 30% tax credit on solar, which is massive. So what they expect is going to happen, they expect that extension is going to increase demand by 40% over the next 5 years. So what it does, the value proposition in solar, you're competing against, we're trying to beat the alternative in terms of savings to the customer. So the real goal is to create year one savings for a consumer. And so some of these markets where utility prices are really low, the cost of power is really low, these markets that have been unreachable in the past for solar to really make any financial sense are now becoming viable places for adoption. So I think what you'll see over the next few years is that a lot of these states where solar really hasn't gained any traction is going to gain a ton of traction. You kind of have a combination of federal incentives that are keeping the cost down to the consumer, the overall cost down, plus utility rates that are continuing to go up as demand. We'll get into EV and some of those things, hopefully, in this conversation a little bit later. But as demand continues to increase, so will utility prices. And then you've got efficiency in the solar installation and hardware component, side of things. And so less panels that are producing the same amount of power as more panels did back in the day. And so as panels become more efficient, as labor probably doesn't change much. In fact, it may go up a little bit over the next few years. But as product becomes more efficient, incentives exist, and utility rates with demand from EV go up, you're going to see a lot of adoption in the solar space. So the incentives will help dramatically stabilize some of the uncertainty around players wanting to get in the space from there was some uncertainty around when those incentives would stop. And so it provides some stability around people that want to get in the space from an investment standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly we'll see some new partnerships and even new offerings to consumers. For instance, Bank of America came out with a new finance offer to get the in-home charging. When you buy an EV, you can go ahead and finance that charging thing you're going to need in your garage to make sure your car operates well. So the market is changing even in what we're offering consumers so that they can have these products. It comes all around, right, to data and software and integration. And so, Jason, I want to come back over to you and see if you can share a little bit more about, this value of data, the complexity of the integration, and, what in the end, ultimately, are you trying to do? Is the focus wholly on the consumer having an understanding of energy consumption, energy savings? Maybe expand on all that for us.
Sure. So when I came over to Green Marbles, one of the first things that they asked me to do was help provide a solution for utilities to offer solar to their customers. And I had to go back to my days when I worked at SRP, specifically in the solar group. And I used to see a lot of these contracts and leases that were just absolutely not in favor of the customer. And that's just the way it was a free market. They could sell it however they wanted. And so I thought, well, if I wanted to start my own solar company, how would I do this so that you could look at this through the utility lens to protect their customer, and so that you're really not selling solar as much as you're educating the customer and empowering them. And this comes, you're right, to data. The data is there, specifically as it relates to providing customers estimates on what a PV system, a solar system could do for them. So too often you see quotes that use incorrect energy costs. They're overinflated utility rate escalations. They don't use the right price plan that you're on when they're modeling a savings estimate. They don't take into account fixed costs and demand charges. It's just sort of a generic, utility average or a state average. And that's not good for the customer. And unfortunately, these customers don't know enough to ask the vendors these questions. And so we've really thought that it's important when we share this information with utilities that we can offer a solution partnering with Nomo to do this, because this data is available. Sometimes this data is available down to the hourly level. And these estimates should take into account net metering policies from the utility as well. I think we'll talk about net metering in a little bit, but net metering, it's all over the place. The kilowatt hours that are credited could be at the full retail rate. They could be at some wholesale rate or some value of solar rate, and everything.
So maybe sorry to interrupt you, but can you explain to us what net metering is in case some of our audience doesn't understand that term, may not be familiar with it?
I apologize. Sure. Net metering refers to the policy where you receive credit for excess generation that your solar puts back on the grid. So in an example, if you were generating 100 kilowatt hours from your PV system and you only needed 50 to power your house, 50 of those kilowatt hours would go back to the grid. And the amount credited that you get for those kilowatt hours depends on the utility. If it was the full retail, if the cost of electricity at that time was 15 cents, you'd be getting 15 cents back. Other utilities have different policies where you'll get 3 cents or some other number. So, and that's important in the system design of the house and of the customer. So this is all extremely important data, and that's why it needs to be utilized properly. It's there. You have to use it when you are working with these customers to protect their interests.
And Jason, maybe we can take a big step back and tell us why do utilities care so much? You know, why is this something that needs to happen? That the addition of solar and storage and assets in the home.
Well, we've talked to a lot of utilities, and one of their biggest concerns is that they have seen a lot of basically actors in the industry that aren't really looking out for the interests of the customer. They're more worried about, getting a higher margin for selling a PV system. It's more predatory practices. They aren't really fully forthcoming. And again, it goes back to, unfortunately, the customers just don't know enough to ask these questions. And so we want to design a program working with utilities to protect their customers where we give them all of this information. And again, it's not about selling, it's giving customers the right information so that they can make an informed decision on whether or not solar is right for them.
That's great. And it brings us back around a little bit onto the security providers. And, I love that the word trust already came up in the conversation. It's an important word in any relationship, whether business or personal. And so, Sean, maybe you can share a little bit about this position that the security that you already hold, right, as a security solution provider, and why it makes sense. And I'd love to also hear Clint's view as well.
Yeah, so security providers are in a great situation because our companies collectively together have expanded the smart home over the years. So this is simply a natural progression anyway. Now, with Clint's offering with Nomo, it's providing the easy button, which makes it even easier to get into that space. But there's already a dialogue between the service providers and the customer, and they are a consultant. Brendan had mentioned that, earlier in the discussion, and that's the real value of Alarm.com and our dealers is really that relationship. Now, if we can expand on that and provide value with technology, and I think this is where down the road, artificial intelligence and the Alarm.com software can provide a lot of value in the back pocket of our service providers. This data can be used on for the customer's enhanced experience of smart home. So we constantly want to evolve. But the big difference here too is that the Alarm.com position, when it comes to the data that our platform is collecting from all of our ecosystem partners, is that the data stays private. And I think that's a real competitive advantage as well, that our dealers can ultimately, tell the consumers out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And the privacy and security, and it is a big deal. In fact, a major barrier for people buying a lot of these products to begin with. So Clint, do you have any comments here on the role of security with solar and how that works, especially in the relationship zone there?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, Jason mentioned it. There are a lot of bad actors in the solar space. It's a wild, wild west a little bit, and it's unregulated. You've got naive customers for the most part across the country. Solar's a new concept, especially in these emerging markets. And you've got, hungry salespeople that are maybe, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. A lot of them may be naive as to what they're doing and maybe not accurately offering, but it is the wild, wild west a little bit in the solar space today. And and that's obviously what, we're trying to do, is to standardize on some practices that, provide that trusted solution for consumers in the space. From a trust standpoint, I think the role of, Jason mentioned it with the utilities, utilities are trusted by their subscribers, as it relates to power. That's, they're very trusted source of information, as well as the security player. So the security company of today has been trusted. The homeowners entrusted them to protect their family and the things that they value most in life. And so they think they can trust the opinion of a security player. And that's really where we think the magic can happen in the security space, is by a trusted source in the security company introducing a trusted offering and a trusted customer experience that they can get behind. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brendan, maybe we can get your feedback on this. Can you share a little bit about what region you're in and area you're serving, and maybe describe some of your customers and their perspective, right? Or if you're working directly with home builders and you're coming in to say, look, I can help support this next generation of services to help future-proof that home build. Love to learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing.
Sure. I'm sorry if I didn't announce that when I began. We're in the Mid-Atlantic here, just outside D.C., Northern Virginia, Maryland, D.C., and then we touch the fringes as well. We've based our entire company on the integrity and trust value proposition in serving our clients, because we feel if we can do the right thing there, not just by our colleagues and coworkers, but by our customers, we'll have an opportunity to sit at the table. And quite honestly, that's why Trinity decided to partner with Nomo and Alarm, because of a very consistent approach in how we're going to bring this solution to the market. At the end of the day, solar is not for every family, and it's not for every rooftop. Depending upon where the house is positioned, the amount of roof space that might be available, all plays into the calculation, if you will, as to whether or not this financial equation makes sense for a family or not. And we, as I mentioned earlier, take a very consultative approach and lay out the facts and serve as a consultant, so that when our customers make the decision that it is right for their home, they're usually telling their neighbors and friends about the overall experience, and we're not having to be knocking on doors. Our phones are ringing from the references that we're receiving. So we like our approach thus far as we're continuing to enter the space, and we're going to remain consistent there with the help of Nomo and Alarm, that we're able to come in and help us get into this space and educate us as to how to go to market. And I could tell you that every builder discussion that we're having, they're attempting to understand how they play. Do they do it as an option up front while constructing the home, or do they do it as a trusted partner in the post-close space? And I could tell you this, which I found interesting, up against the 7% of penetration, we started offering a solar pre, which is literally a conduit from the attic down to the electrical panel. And we have a 50% take rate of that option. So if that is a forecast as to where this space might be going in the future, we're very excited about the opportunities there with the partnerships that we've established with the two companies that are here with me today.
Yeah, we see a lot of demand from consumers and business, and especially in the multifamily space as well. So I think there is a lot of growth coming, and we'll see how long it takes really for this very large transformation in energy to take place, where solar, is certainly a big piece of that. I want to focus our next few minutes on the services and then the home automation that can be incorporated into the home that enables energy savings to happen. And so let's start, Jason, I want to come to you first and talk a little bit about some of the services that we're seeing as a result of the fact that we've got these devices in the home, maybe the meter, and then you've got the utility all integrated in. So what in the end is the consumer end up getting in terms of new services coming?
Sure. So the first part to managing your energy really comes just from education, and utilities, for the most part, do a good job informing their customers about when the best time to use their energy is. For example, not during on-peak hours. Don't run your dryer and your AC and your clothing dryer all at the same time, and your oven. So behavior only gets you so far. So beyond that, it does require the hardware and software solutions like that Alarm.com offers. And one of the most common ways to use a smart home system to better manage your energy is obviously the thermostat. But it goes beyond just controlling your thermostat with an app. So you can consider controlling other devices, like if you have electric water heater, for example. So if you don't need to be heating your water heater during on-peak hours, then go ahead and shut them off. Specifically here in Phoenix, there's really no need, as most of them are in the garage anyways. But you can have a smart switch, for example, to make sure that your dryer doesn't turn on during on-peak hours. Have settings where your thermostat will turn off if your front door has been open for a certain amount of time. Then also think about a smart home system that is really tailored to your lifestyle, and specifically when you're home, how you use electricity, and also based on your utility rate, right? That's important. You want to sort of set it and forget it solution if you can. And then when you layer all that on top of your rooftop PV system, so that you really truly have one holistic, smarter home where your PV and battery are communicating to your smart home system in concert. That's really, I think, what the end goal is here. And EV charging is another area where managed charging could benefit the utility. So think about DR events that shift the charging hours to off-peak hours. There'd certainly be customers that would participate in a program like that if there's some form of incentive. So I think I've heard Sean say before, security is really the driver behind home automation, but the home energy management component is where I'm really excited to see it take off and truly benefit customers.
Yeah, and our data definitely shows that safety and security, and then energy savings, and also convenience are at the top, and they always have been since we've been looking at the market. So, Sean, I want to give you the opportunity here. We're talking about really this vision of the whole home experience, and it's interesting if you think back 20 or 30 years. Back then, it was the entertainment companies and control companies maybe making the move into the whole home, and now we see all these devices added to the security system, extending applications and services, and now really the opportunity to become the whole home provider, leading with that security value proposition, and also energy right behind it. So maybe share with us a little bit about your focus on the unified experience and really bringing a very, very complex environment together for the consumer at home.
Yeah, happy to do so. So, from the Alarm.com perspective, we've always believed in a one app experience where we bring all these, data points together. And to Jason's comments earlier, there's a lot of data there. I mean, we haven't even touched on like whole home smart utility panels that are now being developed, but it does expand into, EV and battery, and we have the weather feed. Is it going to be sunny out or not? Is it going to be hot or cold that day? And does your home ultimately make the proper adjustments so that your home stays efficient and sustainable? So what used to be something that was only available for maybe the top 2%, know that with Alarm.com, it's a broad spectrum of services and devices, and these consumers can reap the benefits of us getting more aggressive in leveraging this private data for the benefit of the customers. So I think there's a lot of future automation and integrations that can be had, but in the energy services area alone, there's just so much potential there, and we're really excited about not only helping out individual consumers in their homes, but I see this expanding into the commercial space. Certainly, we're already engaged in a lot of conversations with production builders. Going back to some of the comments that Brendan had mentioned, these production builders want to compete against the resale market. So having a solar ready, an EV ready, a battery ready home, these are all, key differentiators, but it all comes down to this one app experience, bringing it all together, and then letting that data tell a story that the customer wants to go down. And it is very clear to us that energy efficiency is part of that story today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring in some really good points about the home builder market. If we extend that thinking even further, we know that builders right now are doing a lot of build to rent, right? Because we're going to have a problem with younger folks maybe being able to buy a house because of interest rates, or for whatever reason, they're not buying a house. They want to live at home. And just the ability for homes to be available. So builders coming out with homes that they're building that they know they're never going to sell, right? So now it's an investment, and certainly they're going to be looking at what they're putting in the home in a different way than they might have when they just sell it right off, right? It become and safety, security, water leak detection, energy savings, and that point of differentiation to get a renter into that home, I think is going to become a pretty big deal. It is also, this promise of solar and what it can do is not just something consumers might want. There's going to be this need, right? Because of the issues with supply and electricity and being able to, the utilities, energy providers being able to manage that. So Clint, I want to get back over to you here and see if you can touch on, really what is this promise for the consumer? What is it for the utility? And then I also want to see if you can talk a little bit more about your easy button. And what that, can you re-explain that? I heard it a couple times. I want to make sure I and our audience understands exactly what's going on there.
Sure. I'll answer the easy button question first, if that's okay. So we have built up. We have a platform that's built up of thousands of solar sales professionals across the country that can meet a customer at the kitchen table or virtually in nearly any market where solar makes sense. And we're integrated with the best installers in the business. So if you think of that as kind of your network, and with technology, we're able to provide companies that want to participate in the upside of solar by adding solar to their product mix for their customer without having to sell it or install it or get their hands dirty, but participate pretty aggressively in the upside of the economics of solar. We're a perfect solution for that. So you can partner with Nomo, pass, through a series of, your onboarding with us. And what that entails, we obviously look at your use case, obviously, and where you meet the customer. But in the security space, for example, it's an easy introduction and lots of different ways you can get in front of the customer to pass that lead to Nomo, to get it to the right salesperson, to have the right conversation with guardrails around the offering. So protection around the price to the consumer, protection around the experience that they're going to have, a tracking of net promoter score at the sales rep experience and also at the install experience to ensure a safe and protected customer journey. Meanwhile, participating and sharing in that upside with the original source of that customer. So that's really the easy button, is partnering with us. You can participate in a variety of ways. Lead share is the easiest one, kind of a crawl, walk, run approach. We see security companies starting there and then maybe taking it to this next step of selling solar. They can do it on our platform and access installers across the country in nearly 40 markets, 40 states. And then, if some want to go on to install themselves down the road, that we see a few players kind of entering that space, we can help with that as well. So that's really the easy button. As far as the promise of savings, the goal from a value proposition standpoint is to create year one savings. So that's where we'll see real adoption and kind of mass adoption, is if we can provide an offering to the consumer that provides them year one savings. And when I say that, what I mean is what they're paying to have solar, maybe in a zero down value prop. So $0 down, here's what you would pay in a finance solar offering over the course. There's a variety of ways to buy solar, but cash or finance is the most popular, either in a loan or a lease or a PPA. But here's your monthly payment for solar with zero down versus what you're paying the utility. And if we can show year one savings and drive a predictable bill that customer can count on, savings was the main thing customers looking for. Predictability around those savings and consistency around their energy prices is the second thing. And then the third thing is peace of mind around backup storage. Think of storage. So power outages and brownouts and blackouts and all those things. I moved to California this last summer, and so started to become aware of what those things are. I was unaware of those before, but brownouts and blackouts happening, you have some peace of mind that will come by having storage in your home. So that's the goal is year one savings, predictable prices of their energy, and peace of mind.
Great. Jason, you have any comments on the promise of solar from the utility perspective and that perspective that you might share?
So I think one other value prop to utilities to consider when you think about an opportunity to offer solar to your customers, there could be some form of incentive where in order to help better manage the grid, and we're talking about voltage fluctuations, really reducing peak, not having too much solar on the grid during non-peak times. Think about an opportunity where utilities control the inverter in order to reduce energy usage during the middle of the day when home loads are at their lowest, but solar generation is at its peak. So customers might be interested in participating in that, throttling back their solar if there's some form of incentive. So there's a two-way street. Same thing with battery. So if you think about an opportunity to control a customer's battery from the utility perspective, there might be real value there, again, for an incentive. But this just helps alleviate stress off the grid. It could be a win for the customer. It could also be a win for the utility.
That's great. Are there any other comments anybody might want to make on the promise of solar before we talk a little bit about how consumers are responding to these solutions?
I'll jump in and just simply say that I think it's really important for these two industries, both the security space and the solar space, to really understand what each of these sectors are trying to accomplish with smart home. And that's where Alarm.com and Nomo and our partnerships can help explain that a little bit further. There's a tremendous opportunity to make these industries better when they work together, and we're making huge strides right now to accomplish that. And we're really excited about what's to come.
Yeah, that's great. And certainly there is a lot of opportunity. I want to remind our audience, if you have any questions, go ahead and send them in. We have about 15 more minutes. I want to focus the remainder of the conversation really on the consumer and their response to some of these solutions. We've been, studying the space, doing lots of research work. We know that now 16% of households have a smart thermostat, which is a 3% adoption finally over last year and the 5 years prior, right? We were really stuck at that 11 to 13% adoption mark for thermostats. And so we finally saw that jump a little bit, but really, there's 84% of households who don't have one, right? So there's a long way to go. I would love to hear a little bit more about how that demand is showing up and how the consumer is responding to this. And so, Brendan, if we could start with you there, and then we'll go back and maybe hear from Sean. Sorry.
Sure. I think the expectation of the home is an extension of the vehicle, and you look at the technology that is already incorporated in a car that you might purchase in the last 3 to 5 years. There's a control screen, and you can operate everything that the car has to offer. And yet in the construction and home space, that's not necessarily the case. So we see the customers wanting to have a connected ecosystem of technology, i.e., that's why Alarm is so important. And we focus on that to help that customer experience that goal. We spend a ton of time on making sure that we're doing that correctly and listening to the customer. So we survey our customers and we ask what's important of them. We measure NPS, and we want to make sure that the overall experience is just amazing. And I think in an attempt to retain customers and to continue to deliver value, making sure that we're the ones introducing to our customers the things that they might want to consider in their home is going to be really important. You look at some adoption rates, security has been stuck in the mud between 22 and 25%. Well, how do we grow that space? And I think it's with smart home / security, because I think the take rates and demand for smart home are greater than 23 to 25%. And if we're doing our jobs and properly explaining and consulting, I think we can help the industry grow.
Yeah, that's great. And, consumers absolutely expect technology in their lives and are looking for things to understand safety and security, understand what's going on in their environment when they're not there, being able to control things remotely. But the biggest part is it has to work, right? And that's been kind of some of the problem over many years, right? Is the products working, and they can work standalone just fine. But maybe when you start integrating 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 8, and trying to figure that out without a full system that's unified, you might run into some issues. So Sean, if you would maybe share a little bit more again on this value of that unified experience and maybe Alarm.com's vision. I mean, it's you all have done so many different things to move into from a security provider to really a smart home solution provider, right? Where, perhaps in years to come, you could be offering 5G services and be the service provider of the home. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen in the decades to come.
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of Alarm.com. I mean, over my career, it's sometimes hard to predict some of the new products and integrations that we do. And what's fascinating is that it's always evolving. And specifically though, with energy services on a consumer perspective, I think one thing that's really important is addressing the pocketbook of the consumer. In the past, Alarm.com and still is all about security and safety, and that's the backbone of our success. That is a very difficult sector to be very good at. But as we expanded into other areas, it truly has been a natural progression of the smart home just getting smarter. And what we're seeing now, especially with the terms inflation and people trying to cut costs wherever they can, well, if you look at your utility bill, it continues to edge up. Every region, every state is going to be a little different, of course. But I live in Virginia, and that bill continues to increase year after year. And so I think consumers can look at their home and the evolution of smart home as perhaps an asset that can save you money. It's not just about an expense anymore. And so if the solar smarter home can save you money, I think that will grab the attention of consumers with what Alarm.com is doing and some of our partners. And then on top of that, going back to some of the tax incentives that Clint mentioned, that in itself is a huge tax incentive and also another cost saving. So I think a lot of this is about what's driving innovation is the financial incentives that we can extend to consumers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly security and safety plus save money and save the world maybe, right? Because you're doing good by storing your energy and giving it back to the grid. There's a lot of positive things here. And real quickly, does anybody else want to make any comments on the consumer? And then we'll just go, we've got our last set of questions, so I want to make sure we get to the end. But was there anybody else you wanted to touch on the consumer perspective? Unification systems. Okay, great. Let's go to our final question. I want to give you both just 2 minutes, right, to sum it up for us in what's going to be different now. If you can get your crystal ball out and tell me in 3 years, where do you see the market being dramatically different, or perhaps not? Perhaps it's slow and steady as we've seen it many years prior. And let's go ahead, Brendan, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, I think with some of the federal government mandates on electric vehicles, they're going to become more and more popular than ever before. And the statistics would share that the majority of the charging is done at home. So to Sean's point, energy management and looking at your ongoing expenses there, how do I do that in the most efficient and effective way? And how do I get that information real time so that I can manage my home in the most cost-effective way? So I think you'll have the continued expansion of the products and services that we're talking about today. It'll become part of the ecosystem that is considered smart home. And I think we, as integrators and players in the space, need to be there to be able to deliver and service these products so that customers can take advantage of the technologies that are available to them in their home.
Well, absolutely. You all play a real critical role in terms of getting these products into homes. And I love seeing the support that Alarm.com and other companies like JCI and Residio are really giving to the security dealers, right? You all need the support behind you to ensure that you all stay in business and that you grow and are able to serve your customers. Jason, you want to go ahead?
So I will, but I'm going to put on my utility hat for this question because I know Clint and Sean are going to be able to speak much better to smart home and solar than I will. But just for this question, I think it'll be very interesting to see how hardware and software vendors work alongside utilities to be integrated into their larger, robust DERMS systems. For those not familiar, DERMS refers to a software platform utilities used to manage and control distributed energy resources on the grid. So think about solar and battery. That's going to be what's taking shape in the utility space over the next few years. It's going to be an important asset for utilities. And that's where this really just comes together when you think about the grid. So when you have an asset like a DERMS that can support frequency or voltage on the grid, shift load, provide emergency demand response, there's so many players in this space that from smart home to solar and EV charging and battery, that I imagine they're going to want to be part of that discussion and solution.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up some really good points. And actually, JT Thompson with Generac Grid Services at our Smart Energy Summit brought up the tens of thousands of assets that they have in certain markets, particularly Texas, that they are not connected, right? And so ERCOT is really missing out on that ability to pull in and leverage those assets that could be controlled for, we've had a few issues here in Texas around, reliability. So great comments there. Clint, I'll go to you next.
You bet. Yeah, I think the next 3 years are going to be super exciting. I think to Brendan's point, there's a tsunami of EV demand coming that I don't think anyone quite understands how big, and I call it a tsunami because it's more than a wave. It will be it'll be substantial. For every 100 miles that an EV drives per day, it will double the amount of consumption of the average American. So you think one EV, two EVs, what's the future of how many EVs are in your driveway? That's a ridiculous amount of demand, and I don't see any coal burning power plants being added to this country anytime soon. So where's that supply going to come from? And so it's going to compound the demand for solar, and you're going to see the solar players. My perspective from talking to the security dealer here, the biggest home security and automation players in the space of the future will be the solar players. You're starting to see solar players add smart home. They're really a blended offering. It's one offering. It's not one with the other, and they're kind of complementary. It will be one. You've got major players in the solar space with this kind of wave of demand for solar, adding smart home. And if the security players either need to become a part of the solution. And my perspective is that if security players don't have an offensive solar strategy, they're going to be spending a lot of time creating defensive smart home strategies over the next few years. And so my encouragement would be to get a solar strategy, even if it is just to dabble and to try the easy button, if you will, with Nomo, to start doing something because the solar tsunami is coming because of the demand with EV and the interest in savings, as Sean's mentioned, and everything else. So it's going to be exciting next few years. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Love those comments. Sean, you've got the final word here on the future of solar and smart home next 3 years.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on what Clint just said. I think it comes down to solar awareness. So, we've done a very good job of creating awareness with our dealer network to address, some of the door knockers that are out there that are rolling in smart home into these solar contracts by simply educating the consumers on the solar offering. It really does open up these incredible conversations and insight in these pockets around the U.S. And, one thing that Alarm.com is very, very good at is listening to the voice of the dealer. So we have had a lot of success in rolling out our solar program to many, many strategic dealers. And we're starting to see even that tsunami within our dealer network that are interested in talking about solar. But the best part about this is that once the dealers are engaged in conversations with consumers, then the voice of the consumer is heard, which then drives the innovation to EV, to battery, all these tremendous opportunities that the data is showing us we have to do. So we're very excited about our relationships on the inverter side, with our relationship with Nomo, and the feedback that we're getting from dealers. But we do recognize that this is a dynamic market, and we're going to continue to change and evolve, and we're going to continue to listen. So we're very, very excited about energy services and the future of Alarm.com.
Well, there certainly is a lot of opportunity, especially with these intertwining products and ecosystems, and then the services that stem from them. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you for an awesome conversation and for your time. We very much appreciate you, and I hope to see you in person next time. But thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Great. And I want to also give another shout out to Alarm.com for their support of this session. Next up, we have Jennifer Kent, Parks Associates Vice President of Research, who's going to share some of our data before the next session, strategies for attracting new buyers. Thank you.
Wonderful, fantastic first panel from Elizabeth and all of those great speakers. Love hearing about energy and solar and what's really coming down the pipe and really already here for the smart home. As Elizabeth mentioned, I'm Jennifer Kem, Vice President of Research with Parks Associates, and we are diving into our next session topic, which is strategies for attracting new buyers. Before we launch into that, I'd love to thank our sponsors, so certainly Alarm.com for sponsoring that first session. Also our research sponsors, Cox Communities, NICE, Ubeity, our platinum sponsors, Alarm.com, the Connectivity Standards Alliance, Johnson Controls, Origin, and Rapid Response Monitoring. Our event sponsors, Schneider Electric and Salient. For our whole connections, these folks are sponsoring our whole connection series, including breakfast at our in-person event from Cooktop Safety and Nimbio. Our break sponsor, Avani, as well as our Wi-Fi sponsor, Beklar. As well as thank you very much to all of our speakers who are participating today and throughout our connection series. So we are talking about strategies for attracting new buyers. So I wanted to start with some of Parks Associates research, and then we'll bring in our industry experts to tell us what they're seeing. So as we think about expanding the market, I first want to recognize the substantial growth that the industry has achieved over the past 5 years. You can see that on average, U.S. internet households tell us that they own 16 connected devices today across connected consumer electronics, smart home, connected health devices, up from less than 10 devices in 2017. And in Q4 2016, just 17% of all U.S. internet households told us that they own one of a long list of what we consider core smart home devices, lights, locks, thermostats, doorbells, garage door openers, appliances. And that rate has more than doubled in the past 5 years. 41% now own at least one core smart home device. 2020 and 2021 in particular were really strong growth years as consumers really did a lot of peace of mind buying in sort of in response to the health crisis and some social political turmoil, and we're really seeking some more peace of mind. 2022 was a softer year, due to inflation, constrained consumer spending, and a slowdown of the housing market. You can see, again, overall adoption has grown to 41% owning at least one core smart home device. But purchase intentions and purchases made last year were about flat with 2020. Still elevated from prior years, of course. Now we think that the expansion we've seen so far is certainly due to a lot of hard work from you all listening today. We think there's a lot of opportunity ahead. And a lot of that opportunity on the next slide is in attracting greenfield buyers. So those who do not yet own a smart home device and don't consider themselves particularly tech forward. So today, households without a smart home device, which is still just the majority of internet households, by the way, represents this nice bell curve, right? Of with the bulk of the market really identifying as early majority and then late majority and how they relate to technology. And then households owning a smart home device today strongly skew to that innovator and early adopter categories. And there's a lot of opportunity in attracting those later adopters into the smart home market, including the more than 50 million U.S. consumers ages 65 and older who tend to skew to the later side of this curve. Now, when you think about these different customer segments, they have different needs, different motivations. On the next slide here we go, that call for different strategies, different pricing strategies, marketing messages, and even product design. So for instance, innovators and early adopters often find you, right? They can easily imagine compelling use cases. They can quickly see the benefits. The early adopter crowd tends to be the least price sensitive, but then once you move into early majority, you really need to see, you're really talking more to a practical buyer, right? They need to see the value. You need to prove that value to them. They need to see the return on investment. What are they getting for their spend? Oftentimes, it's just a marginal improvement on a product that they know and that they use and that they trust today, but it's made more obviously and actually better with connectivity or with a new feature, and the costs justify that. And then the late majority and laggards are folks who they're simply not willing, essentially, to take the risk, right? The risk of spending their dollar unwisely or disrupting their routine with needing to learn to do something a different way. Really, or opening up themselves up to be vulnerable to what they may already fear about technology and the data and the privacy risks that come with that. So on the next slide, when we ask those who do not own smart home devices today why they don't own smart home devices, the top two answers are about cost and lack of perceived benefit. They're really consistently the two biggest inhibitors to smart home device adoption, and they're not always the same thing. Those people, there are people who see the value but simply can't afford the product. Those who can afford the product but really don't see the value to their lives, and it really comes back to that practical impact on their lives. We actually have more consumers telling us that smart TVs are more affordable than smart light bulbs, right? So it's not necessarily about the dollar amount, right? It's about the value of the traditional version of the product and the price premium we're asking them to pay for smart home products, and then again, that benefit provided to their lives. Now, I want to call out that third barrier, privacy and security, because it's important too, and I'm going to come back to that in just a minute on the next slide. So when we look at the buying process, what do smart home shoppers look for? Among those who own smart home devices, actually on the right side of the slide here, they tell us that price, when they're shopping, what are they looking for? They're looking for price. They're looking for compatibility with their smartphone operating system. They're looking for the brand reputation, as well as expert reviews, right? Experts that can help them understand, which products to select. And we do also find that smart home shoppers are generally pretty heavy researchers. There is some impulse buying, but many shoppers really do at least some research on the products that they buy beforehand. For totally greenfield households, the chart here on the left, those consumers who do not currently own or intend to buy a smart home device, we ask what would motivate you to buy a smart home device. And the top two are cost related, like I was talking about, a product sale or an insurance discount, something to bring these somewhat aspirational products, into their price point. But the next two are interesting, right? The ability to store data locally and a mark that ensures cybersecurity certification both speak to an anxiety consumers have about the security of their connected products and possibly the brands that offer them. Now, one thing we've learned from looking at current owners, buying patterns, and perception of value and affordability is that there's a tipping point. A perception of affordability and value shift when a household acquires more than two devices. So when a household owns just one smart home device or two smart home devices, they actually rate the affordability of those devices higher than they rate the value of smart home devices to their own lives. But once a household reaches 3 or 4 smart home devices, those perceptions switch. And those households say that actually the devices are more valuable than they even are affordable. And we think that this reinforces the idea that bundles of products offered together or systems that have products that work together provide an immediately gain in this high value perception and a high willingness to recommend products to others. And the final point I wanted to call out in engaging the new buyer is, a key element in attracting and keeping new smart home buyers is serving them well across the buying and the ownership life cycle. And that really starts at installation. So in the security space, we've seen a dramatic rise in self-installed systems really peaking during the pandemic due to health considerations of having people into the home. But since then, Pro Install has rebounded a bit. We continue to really see evidence that consumers want choice. You will have buyers who want a professional's help to install a device or system, whether because they don't feel they can do it themselves, or they don't want to spend the time, or they want it done well. There's also a part of the population who will absolutely prefer to install devices and systems themselves. They're confident in their ability to do so. There's cost savings there. They simply don't want to wait around for an appointment. And even in the security space, we're starting to see more players offering both options, which is really interesting, even to the dealer channel. So we survey dealers every year as well. Even security dealers, some are starting to offer DIY options. So 16% of security dealers in 2022 told us that they sell DIY systems today that can be professionally monitored. And 17% told us that they sell DIY systems without pro monitoring, in addition to the pro install options that they're offering. And the number one reason dealers are doing that is because they see DIY as an on-ramp to upgrading, an on-ramp for first-time buyers that they can upgrade later. And secondarily, simply that there's demand for it and so that they're offering it. And while we hear a lot from dealers that they certainly see DIY systems as a competitor, they also see 50% say that they do see that DIY can attract a new type of customer and a new type of buyer into the security market. So we're going to hear a lot from our experts on this panel about the most effective ways to reach today's consumers and how they're thinking about reaching tomorrow's customers. We also want to hear from you. So I wanted to invite you all into a research effort that Parks Associates has ongoing right now. So we are running a survey right now of folks like you, so executives running consumer IoT businesses that run or market or build products and manage those products to better understand the most effective methods for managing a consumer IT business and ineffective methods. What are your top pain points in running the business, right? What key metrics and KPIs are you watching? Our team, I believe, is going to put that link to this quick survey in the event chat. And then when we close the survey in about a week, and then we'll be looking at the results, and we will be sharing some select key findings of this study with anybody who participated. So we certainly love to learn from you and invite you into that survey. So with that, I'd love to invite our speakers into our panel today. I'm going to give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves. Very excited to have speakers from Kata Smart Lock Solutions, Pepper IoT, and Alula to talk about reaching new customer segments. And Nick, I'm going to start with you. Nick, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me. So I am the CEO of Katas North America, and Katas is a new smart lock that is coming into the market this year. We will be at ISC West, and that will be kind of our launch of our Z-Wave products. And we're really excited to be joining the market and joining the group and for you to have us here. Me personally, I've been in the lock business for 7 years, working for a different manufacturer, and in the security world for the last 21, 22 years, as I worked directly with a security company prior to that. So I've been in home security, home automation for 20 plus years. Feel like I know the market very well, and am excited to bring Katas locks to the market and really help expand and grow the smart home solutions in every form and fashion. Thank you.
Great. Glad to have you, Nick. And looking forward to those locks coming to market. Also, we have Scott Ford, who's the founder and CEO of Pepper IoT. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for having me. Really great to be here with this panel. So I'm Scott Ford. I'm the CEO of Pepper. What Pepper is a full-service consumer IoT platform. We serve big enterprises who want to get into the consumer IoT game, but don't have the means or a platform option to do it. We're independent, multi-tenant, agnostic to devices and services and technologies, RFs, that type of thing. So we work with enterprises on a custom basis to build out their consumer IoT services. So those include service providers like insurance carriers or telcos, consumer brands that have a consumer electronics product roadmap that they want connected and need a platform and all the capabilities that are required to distribute those devices and interact with the end users. So thanks for having me again, Jennifer.
Great, thanks. Glad to have you, Scott. Okay, and next we have Warren Hill, who is the VP of Marketing with Alula. Hi, Warren. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about Alula.
Jennifer, everyone, thank you for having me. Appreciate the invitation to Alula. You know, I've been with Alula for 3 years now. I've been the marketing leader for the last 2. And, you know, it's fun to look back over my time in the security industry, over 15 years now, and look at how much things have changed in this industry since I first cut my teeth as a product manager over the old Simon 3 security panel at GE Security, for those of you who've been around a while. You know, I look forward to having this conversation today. Who is Alula? Alula is a full system and service provider of all things security, cameras, the ability to control smart devices, intrusion detection, and everything in between. So it's great to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Okay, Warren. Well, since you went right there and talked about how you've been in the market, all of you really have, for a while, and you've seen the evolution of the market. I'd love to start with you here and talking about what you think works today, right? Before we get to attracting tomorrow's customer, what's really working today to reaching smart home customers?
Well, you know, the way that we reach the market, the smart home market, is through the professional alarm dealer or the integrator channel. That's the only way that we go to market. We believe that professional dealers, they have the knowledge, they have the capability, the credibility to properly take care of people's security needs, smart and simple security. Whether those people are homeowners or business owners. We do have a few dealers, as you had mentioned in kind of your intro, that choose to offer a do-it-yourself or a do-it-with-me solution, and that's fine. I would say, to my knowledge, in all of those cases, those dealers are still providing technical support and system monitoring. And I think it's important to just know a little bit about more who Alula is. I'll add that Alula products and services are rarely put into a home or into a business as just something that's running smart devices. It's typically installed as an intrusion detection, life safety monitoring, or video surveillance system, and then the smart devices are added on to that. But that's typically how our customers take the product to market.
Yeah, we heard a little from the earlier panel about dealers thinking differently about different types of things they can offer, right? Especially there's a lot of discussion about solar and energy. Are you seeing dealers change the way that they're selling or the types of services and offerings that they're selling today compared to maybe when you all started?
Certainly, a lot of that's because of the technology that's come about. But I think that dealers and integrators, they tend to go back and forth trying to figure out what their sweet spot is and what's going to earn their business, what's going to make them money. And sometimes dealers will try getting into the smart home space, and then for whatever the reason may be, they choose to back off of that and just focus back on core security. And then you have others that say, you know what, I know I've got to offer the full basket because that's what consumers are seeing as they watch television ads and as they listen to the radio, they hear about all these cool smart home things that you can do. And so they've kind of grasped onto that, and they're focused on offering the full smart solution, not just intrusion detection that we saw 10 years ago.
Yep. Well, Nick, love to bring you on as well. You know, as you're planning your launch to market and thinking about the access control in particular, can you tell us a little bit about, reaching that smart home customer and, what you can expect?
Absolutely. And I agree with the panel in that, security dealers are key in that area. So it's partnering with them, having them work with us to help push our product. And again, I could say CODIS specifically, yes, obviously that's what I want, but it's locks in general, because I think as we looked at the data that you started off with, and it has grown to above 50% of people that have some sort of smart device. But I really feel like a large percentage of that is maybe an Alexa or a Google or something like that, and that's it. So I think there's still a huge opportunity to expand that into a full ecosystem and have a lot more devices and have it really be a lifestyle management thing for the family to manage the front door and to look at cameras and to have intrusion detection and fire and have a whole system, as opposed to a couple of devices here and there that are, and I don't want to belittle them, but it's kitschy or it's nice, or hey, Alexa, play this song. Well, that's not protecting your whole home. And I think that's where there's still a huge opportunity. So I don't know if it's still just the early adapters, or if it's all the way through the life cycle of kind of the implementation of these products. But I think there's still a huge opportunity to include a full ecosystem and show where there's an opportunity to have devices play off of each other and really grow it from there.
Yep. And love to share that, when we define a core smart home device list, we actually don't count the Alexas and the smart speakers and smart displays, simply because when we ask about how consumers are using those products, the number one thing they always tell us is they're listening to music, right? They're speakers. And so people are using them for audio first, and then information calls or timers. And they have an incredibly important role to play in smart home control as well. So it's not that they're not a smart home device, but they're audio first. But your point is well taken, that, again, our data does show that you get to 3, 4 more devices, and especially integrating those devices, and you see more value. Scott, I'd love to bring you on as well. Obviously, you all actually, support and enable all sorts of different brands going to market and maybe see a diversity of strategies. What can you tell us about things that are effective or not in reaching customers today?
Yeah, we are a little bit different. The devices that work on our platform are distributed by our partners, and they can be, in mass market retail, or, if in the case you're a insurance carrier, you may package up these devices and send them to your policy holders, that type of thing. Our real emphasis is on the creation, deployment, and monetization of services. Our belief is that over time, this market's going to move from a hardware-centric, focus to a services-centric focus. So hardware obviously is very necessary for these systems to run, but increasingly consumers are becoming more prone to pay for services that are related to the devices that they put up in their home. So in terms of services, what we're seeing is a lot of adoption in video, so cloud storage, computer vision analytics, things like that. And so, what we do is try to leverage our own data to identify, consumers that are most likely interested in a subscription sort of model with the products that we create for them. The growth of this category obviously is crazy, given some of the stats that you showed earlier. I think the typical retailer in the marketplace is seeing a lot of growth in terms of the distribution of devices. I should say also, most of what we do is DIY, and so we don't necessarily offer an ecosystem of devices in the form of a kit. We can do that, but we just haven't done it yet. But the typical consumer is trying to solve a discrete use case with a product, and then over time, and we help this through messaging and app and things like that. But over time, they grow their connected lifestyle by adding new devices that kind of operate in harmony with their other devices they have.
Yep. Now, I want to follow up on the point you made about insurance, and services in general, right? So we also see that, one of the top services that consumers pay for in smart home, probably the first is professional monitoring, and then after that, it's video storage, right?
video analytics, self-monitoring, some sort of paid self-monitoring, and that piece of security, peace of mind type of service. When we think about other services, we mentioned insurance. Certainly we're seeing a lot of movement in the insurance space with State Farm making a huge investment in ADT. I think Pepper has a relationship with Notion, if that's right in public, I hope. Do you want to explain a little bit about that relationship and what you're seeing when you think about services in a different way, where we're paying for insurance services today? They don't serve me really at the moment until something bad happens, but this actually is proactive engagement with my insurance in a different way.
Yeah, so we acquired Notion. Notion is a company that has created a multi-purpose sensor that helps, identifying and providing early warning to potential peril in the home, which is important to reduce claims and things like that. So the insurance industry has become a real focus for us. It's there's the State Farm investment in ADT was a huge catalyst that just sort of indicates that the insurance industry is really going to leverage IoT going forward. That's going to be part of their core business and underwriting and tools to help in claims reductions, that type of thing. So there's all the carriers that aren't State Farm really need a solution that leverages IoT in a congruent manner. So today you have devices in the marketplace that are, water leak detection, water shutoff, fire, smoke, intrusion, other things that are typically used by insurance carriers on a point solution basis, and on the product company's app. So not very strategic for the insurance carrier. They do get data, they do get early warning, which is really useful. What we want to do is aggregate all those use cases under the brand of the insurance carrier, so then they can develop a digital relationship with their policyholders, and also collect the data in a much more useful way from a single source.
Interesting. Warren, maybe I'll get to you next, and then over to Nick. So Warren, can you tell us a little bit about, when we think about, tomorrow's customers, right? And how dealers maybe are, shifting their own strategy. How are you, helping them when we survey them? We ask them, what are the big issues that you're dealing with? Actually, a couple of years ago, the number one thing was competition with DIY type solutions, like those that Scott's enabling come to market. But actually, this year it's all staffing. It's problems, getting the staff that we need, supply constraints. It's really just the basics of running the business. But would love to hear a little bit about, how you're helping dealers kind of evolve.
Well, I would tell you, if the primary challenge that they're having is staffing, our response to that is we're trying to make our products more simple to install, more simple to learn, more simple to train new technicians, more simple to train the end user, because that's going to take some of the need off of your company hiring more technicians, hiring more manpower to provide that support. I wanted to speak for a minute. Scott mentioned that he sees the industry going more towards a service-centric model, and couldn't agree more. I think it's kind of already there. Hardware is just there because it's a necessary evil to some degree. You've got to have physical devices there monitoring comings and goings, and water being present, motion being detected, doors being closed, opened, etc. But really, what the consumer consumes and what they use is the app on their phone in most instances, or not even an app on their phone, but just scenes that have been created into an engine so that based off of my motion or my activity, different things happen. Doors unlock, lights turn on, lights turn off, etc. And so I think we're getting there. I think we're already there to a point where service is king, and the services that a dealer can provide to end users is the most important. It's not so much the hardware. Nobody wants to see the alarm panel on the wall or the keypad on the wall. They just want everything to work and make their life more convenient.
Yeah, certainly. We hear a little bit about possibly a move towards positioning as well, maybe security and or smart home or home automation first, as in, as people have more and more devices in their home and are struggling to make it work, who's the guy I call? I know who my plumber is, right? I know who my electrician is. Who's my smart home guy or gal, right? Are you starting to see the channel think more in that way, that they can provide possibly a different, not a different, but an expanded value proposition in that service mindset?
Yeah, I think one thing that I try to share with, alarm dealers that are working with Alula is start out with something basic and simple and build from there. You don't have to go into every home and try to offer a complete smart home package. In most cases, that's not going to work because it's too expensive for the average consumer. And so start with something simple. And in a lot of cases, that's a doorbell. Simply, camera doorbells are seen as, or doorbell cameras, I should say, are seen as they're interactive. Most people have somebody on their doorstep at least once a day, if not more. And so they can really start to digest the value of a doorbell camera. From there, a month after you've installed that system, go back to that same customer and say, hey, hopefully you've enjoyed the doorbell camera that you have on your system already. Let's talk about other cameras that we can install to keep an eye on the alleyway, keep an eye on the back of your home or the back of your business or things like that, and go from there. Same thing with smart devices. Install a light, a smart light, because I know in my home, I'm turning on and off the same light multiple times a day. So set up that smart light so that it interacts with my day-to-day. I open a door, that light turns on. 5 minutes later, that light turns off all by itself. I didn't have to flip a switch or worry about going back and turning it off, anything like that. And then move into other things like door locks and thermostats. For so long in our industry, the security industry, thermostats have been seen as the first mover into the smart world. Well, I don't interact with my thermostat ever. It's a smart thermostat. It's there. It's on the wall. So I would say go to consumers and offer them smart lights, smart locks, and other things, and then get into the Z-Wave shutoff valves or the smart shutoff valves or things like that work with other technology that you have in your home.
Yep, I'm sure Nick's very happy to hear you say start with locks. So Nick, from the access control, perspective, would love, and also just listeners, real quick, I am going to come to the polling results. We have a poll out there about the most effective catalysts to engage and attract new smart home buyers. So if you haven't already, go ahead and respond to the poll, and then we'll bring those results in. But Nick, speaking access control, specifically, right? Can you talk a little bit about, we're seeing some interesting innovations come into the market with locks bringing in video streams and, certainly a core part of the services mindset of gaining access to the home, package delivery, part of the security ecosystem. Tell us a little bit about how the access control and smart lock world is innovating and maybe attracting new buyers that way.
Absolutely. And, I think Warren hit the nail on the head when he's talking about how you kind of get the homeowner into the automation world and you kind of show them what the opportunities are. And I think that's the key, is finding that balance of technology and value. So how much can you put in at the initial install? How willing are they to make an investment to do that? So you have to find that right blend of value and tech to really hook them and get them in and get them to want to do that. So to address your question, if you think about, Warren mentioned the video doorbell is kind of like the leading thing, and everybody seems to have that, and it's kind of the sexy product, and people want that. And you see videos online all the time of what happened at the front door, and the packages were delivered and all of that. And that's where finding that value of adding the door lock to that as well. Because if you think about it, if you have a video doorbell and you get a package delivered and you can see it, you're not at home and you can see that the package is delivered. you can also see the package be stolen, right? So you had no access, you had no way to prevent that, no way to do anything about it. So you have awareness. Whereas if you have a interactive door lock or a smart door lock that you can pair with the system, now you can have your neighbor or someone actually open the door remotely. You disarm the system, open the door remotely, set the package inside, close that, and you're watching all of that through your video doorbell. That is a much higher level of control, and it changes the game from that standpoint. And then you also look at what Codis is coming out with, and we have a video doorbell Wi-Fi deadbolt all in one. So now you're taking multiple products, combining them in once. Now you're going back to that value proposition, and you can say, hey, I have a much more control over what's happening versus just watching what's happening. And it changes the game from that standpoint. So I think it's really getting the consumer, it's almost like home automation is a drug, and you want to get them hooked. You want to show them that, yeah, you can play music and you can turn lights off remotely, but what if you could see your front door? Oh, you now you like that? What if you could open your front door, and instead of setting the package there, set it inside? What if you can, then you just goes down the path from there. So I think that you really get them hooked on how it's a lifestyle thing and it's a control thing, as opposed to just being able to see a few cool things or listen to music or something like that. So,
yeah, I think that multifunctionality you're talking about too is really powerful to a new set of buyers too, right? So a smart speaker is very strongly multifunctional. A smartphone, very strongly multifunctional, right? And in fact, I should say this, I should throw it up for the panel. You've got point devices that do things really, really well, of course, but then you also have a multifunctionality play like Nick's talking about, right? Where you've got a doorbell and a deadlock built all into one, right? Is that one of the keys to maybe attracting a different type of buyer? It's one product all in one, right? Does that increase the value for others? Just generally, and then we'll bring in the results here of our poll. And your thought about that, Warren or Scott?
Yeah, I think that's the more feature functionality you can put in devices that solve discrete use cases for consumers, the better. The higher the adoption, the higher the subscription rate for services, things like that. So I absolutely think one of the things we all have to deal with in this sector is the fragmentation that continues to exist. So not all devices work in harmony with one another. In fact, the extreme is true right now. And so I know there's a lot of work from a variety of companies, including the Matter standard, trying to solve that. So once you're able to allow these various devices to engage with one another, that's where the magic happens, right? And so you can begin to hook the people on this idea of the smart home. Right now, they're dealing with too many apps, and they're solving some of the use cases they desire at the beginning, but there's a bunch of fatigue that sets in when you have to deal with all those different things.
Certainly. Well, let me share with the audience. Actually can see this more than we can, so I'm going to read these out to you. So we asked what will be the most effective catalyst to attract new smart home buyers, and we gave them the options of dropping prices, applications that address practical needs, tech being built directly into new homes. So, it's that expectation you move in the sector there, addressing data security concerns or new brand entrants, right? There's all sorts of big brands that maybe haven't entered the market strongly yet, Apple being one of them, but also, we've seen kind of in and out on retailers in the retail play. So 63%, overwhelmingly the number one answer is addressing applications that address practical needs, followed by data security concerns. So any thoughts from the panel before we move on?
I'd say, as the group here that supports point solutions, I think overwhelmingly the behavior in the market is a focus on solving a use case, right? So, whatever the percentage of the market has, complete home security systems, The rest of the market is looking at adding devices on a one-by-one basis that solves the problem that they're trying to solve. And then they realize that by combining the devices, it can, solve, more and more problems exponentially. So definitely agree with the poll there in terms of having applications that are useful for, whatever problems I'm trying to solve.
Okay. So we have some audience questions coming in. So I'm going to ask one more question, and we're going to move over to audience questions. So Nick, I wanted to get your thoughts actually about kind of merchandising, and then open to anybody too. But your thoughts on the most effective way to drive sales. So one thing I mentioned in my setup was product bundling, retail strategies, and they're selling through insurance, all sorts of different ways, selling as a system or selling point solutions, right? Everybody's thinking about their go-to-market strategy and how you actually merchandise these customers. So any thoughts that you can share on effective?
Yeah, absolutely. As I was preparing, I was thinking about bundling. So I'm glad that has been kind of a recurring theme, because I think that that's really one of the strongest ways to merchandise all home automation products, again, is, and I probably saying it too much, but the whole ecosystem. Because again, if you just buy a video doorbell, that's not whole home control. Or if you just buy a doorbell and a lock, then you don't have a smart thermostat controlling the temperature. If you don't have lights, you don't have. So I think finding that value where you can bundle multiple things, and kind of what Warren was saying earlier, either you piecemeal it and you start with a base package and upgrade from there, which I think part of merchandising, security dealers and even DIY, you have to make that easily adaptable to expand and bolt on new products. Or if you're a security dealer, I think the best way to do it is have that good, better, best package, but don't just say, yeah, this one is this price and the middle one is this price and this is this price, but do it in a way that you show what the value is. So, hey, what do you want to do with your home? Do you have kids that are coming home from school and you want to be able to see when they come in? Or do you have packages being delivered? Do you have, are you in and out a lot, so you want the thermostat to change? So you kind of find out what that ecosystem is, and you really do that analysis and that risk assessment and what that homeowner needs. Then you kind of do and I say good, better, best, but maybe it's not situated that way. It's just package 1, 2, or 3, kind of plugged in based on where it will best accommodate your lifestyle, so that you don't make them feel like, oh, I went with the base package and that's not good enough, but the other one's too expensive. So you really plug and play different devices based on that analysis of how it will benefit them the best. It takes a more sophisticated level of selling. And I think you can do that, like I said, very easily if you have a security consultant come to someone's home, talk to them about that, or do it over the phone. But you can also do it with a DIY, because you can say, what are you trying to solve, even through a website or through something, and say, describe your home or describe your lifestyle. And you kind of plug and play those things, and then it spits out what the best DIY solution would be for you. It may include a lock, it may not include a lock, it may include a thermostat, it may not. It really just depends on what's best value for that customer based on their lifestyle. And I think that's where, and I'm sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but I think that's where, like with new home builders or with some of those things, it makes it a little bit more difficult, because they try to make a one-size-fits-all, and every single family is different. And that's, I think, one of the biggest problems with these devices, is that you can't just have an entire giant package, and you can't just have a base package. You really do have to have the flexibility to customize it for the way you live, so that you see the value and you interact with those devices. Because if not, as we all know, 3 years, 6 years down the road, you're like, I've never set my alarm, or I don't interact with this. Why am I paying for it? Let me get rid of it. As opposed to the flip side of that is, I can't imagine living without this, knowing when my kids got home and getting that timestamp and all of those things. I mean, there's a million examples, right? So I think that's kind of where I would go with the merchandising of it.
I think, Jennifer, I think as business owners, we'd all like to find the silver bullet when it comes to the sales strategy or merchandising. But the fact of the matter is, different types of sales strategies can have success depending on the consumer and the timing. Not everyone has the same needs, has the same wants. And so I think it's important to try different sales approaches, mix things up, cast your net as widely as your company can support. You don't have to do everything all at once, but know what your options are, create a plan, and then work that plan. All small business owners, they've got to have an online presence. They've got to have a website. They've got to have online business listings, Google, Craigslist, Angie, etc. Consumer reviews. You've got to have signage, yard signage, and signage around the neighborhood and around via local sponsorships. You've got to take good care of your current customers so that you can have referrals or paid referrals to family, friends, and neighbors. And that's the way we see a lot of our Alula partners earning new business and growing and expanding their businesses.
Absolutely. Okay, so let me bring in a couple audience questions. We have about 7 minutes left. So there's one maybe for you, Scott, about that relates a little bit to the insurance topic about fire safety solutions and whether or not you're seeing any sort of resurgence. And any of you can comment on this, of course, but Scott, maybe first. Seems like there's a lot of activity there, with insurance coming in, thinking more broadly about peace of mind, not just intrusion. My understanding, the number one cost to insurance is water and fire before, theft, right? So are you seeing any movement on fire safety solutions?
Yeah, sure. So I think the biggest brand in InsurTech IoT that focuses on fire prevention is a device called Ting. You guys all might be familiar with it. It's ART fault detection. So a variety of insurance carriers are offering that to their users. I just read that they've got a substantial program with State Farm. So definitely fire is number 2 in the top 2 of perils that insurance carriers really care about. Number 1 being water damage. So if you can create a scenario where there's some early warning to the homeowner to hey, we detected a leak in your home, get home and try to figure out where it is and stop it. That's the best way to reduce claims, either reduce the claim process to 0 in terms of a water leak in a home, or have a lower amount of damage, so you're decreasing the actual claim out there. But so fire is right behind that, and there are a variety of ways to provide early warning for fire or smoke in the home.
Awesome. Okay, next question actually is on locks. So let me take this back to Nick. So adding features into the smart lock makes a lot of sense. Adding a complete security system into the lock makes the smart lock a central control point. Is anyone moving in that direction? The smartphone being the control panel. The specific product idea being pitched here. So any reactions?
Let me take some notes. Let me write this down.
Right. Okay. So put the security system into the lock.
Yeah.
Go. Yeah.
There's always thoughts, and R&D is always working on ways to expand what the product can do. And a quick example of that is, if you can tell whether the lock is locked or unlocked, that's great. But if the door is not closed, or if the door is ajar and you throw the bolt, it doesn't matter. So there's always talk about trying to find a way to tie into the door hinges and make sure that the door is closed and locked, if that makes sense. So I think some of the limitations are power, because you have locks are currently battery powered, and whether it's a lithium ion battery or it's a 4 AA's, you're limited to that. And there are companies out there that are working on getting power to the door, but that requires another level of wiring. And so retrofitting that indoors is a little bit more difficult than new builds. So I'm not really answering the question specifically. It's because there's a lot of things being worked on, but there's a lot of things to overcome, but that doesn't mean that we can't do it. So I think there's a way to, yes, expand those products so that they are much more inclusive of other devices and other things, and being able to have more capability within certain products. So I think as we are able to work through some of the challenges, that you will see an evolution of the lock come out with, like I said, some of the things that I just mentioned, as well as other things. And then there's also things being worked on how to remotely power the lock, so you're not beholden to either hard wiring or temporary battery packs. So I think there's a lot of things that will come out of that.
I was just going to ask about the power issue. You put a whole bunch of things in that lock, and then are you trying to plug into the door frame, which we see Masonite do, or what? But then, of course, there's more wireless power solutions that we see.
Exactly, and that's we're exploring that now. So there's a lot of things coming.
I think that would be a pretty big door lock. But Nick, hey, if there's a big market for that, Nick, you and I should get together. We can figure out how to put the brains of the security panel into the door lock, and then we can just make hay, right?
Let's do it. Yeah, exactly.
We had some people a couple of years ago that said, hey, why don't you take the brains of the security system and put it in the thermostat? And there's lots of things that we can do from a technology standpoint. We just have to kind of sit down and think about, does it make sense to incorporate this product and functionality inside of that, or do you integrate them through the cloud or some other means and achieve the same output? So
yep.
I think that's the way that this market has chosen to go up to this point. But that doesn't mean that there's not room to integrate the products themselves and have a door lock that also is a camera and other things.
Okay, so we have just a few minutes left. So last question, kind of around the horn. Warren, I'll start with you, and then Scott, and then Nick can close us out about how you determine what buyers want next. Really thinking again about attracting new buyers in, but are you looking at actual product use? Are you taking feedback from your dealers, right? Different methods that you're using to determine where your product development and where your service development is going next. So Warren, if you want to start, and then Scott.
Constantly talking to our current dealers, current partners and other partners, prospective partners, to find out what are they hearing about, what are they being asked for from consumers, small business owners, homeowners, etc. And then we keep an eye on adjacent markets. What's coming out from other markets? How can we integrate with those, or how can we take the functionality of those products and services and incorporate those into our own? A few examples come to mind real quick. Smart device integration with thermostats, lights, and locks. We don't build lights, locks, and thermostats ourselves, but we've taken the products, the panel, and the communicators that we have and have built those so that they can work with those smart devices. We've created a scenes engine and schedules that can automate the activity. We've integrated with Google Home and Amazon Echo so that we can arm and disarm a system just by using your voice. So really it's about looking at the adjacent markets, how people are using those products and services, and figuring out how to take the best things there and integrate those into our own products and services.
Awesome. Scott, how about you? How do you figure out where you're going next?
Yeah, so we're not in the hardware business, but obviously hardware is a pretty critical part of this. So our role is really to counsel our enterprise partners on trends that we're seeing based on the data that we're receiving in terms of usage and other things inside of our platform. Frankly, the biggest, the area of the most awareness of coming trends are among the buyers in retail. So we get a lot of cues based on the orders they're placing to quickly get devices that are in high demand on their shelves. And certainly we spend a lot of time inside of the various use cases at sort of the app or digital level to try to refine and create products that we think will evolve into the future.
All right, Nick, how about you? Any practical advice on what you find is helpful for product development?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that delicate balance of telling customers what they want and asking them what they want, or telling them what's available and asking them what they want, right? So we can come out with the newest, coolest technology, but if they're like, yeah, that doesn't really excite us, then we can't really drive the innovation without having it, as my colleague said, voice of the customer. It's listening to what customers want. And as these gentlemen said, listening to the dealers and listening to the everybody that's working in that industry. What are you hearing? What do people want? Sometimes you can do it and sometimes you can't, but it drives you in a direction, and you just have to be willing to listen to that and innovate and come out with, what will be the next cool thing that will also be adopted, because that's the key to it, right? You could have a super cool thing, but if people are like, yeah, that's cool, but it doesn't really practically apply, then you wasted a bunch of R&D on that. So I've had many meetings with customers where they say, hey, what's new and exciting coming out? And then I reply with, hey, what do you want? It's that give and take of, you tell me what you want and I'll work on it, but I'm also working on this stuff. Is this cool? Do you like this? Kind of throwing it out there to see if they like it.
Yep. We couldn't believe more strongly Parks Associates, the voice of the customer matters, right? Voice of consumer research. Thank you all so much for your time and sharing your expertise. Really appreciate your views.
Nick, Scott, Jennifer, good to be with you all.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, thank you all. So give us just a few minutes, and up next, actually, Elizabeth and I are going to share some of our key learnings from our Smart Energy Summit sessions and some of our recent research work. So we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Great. Welcome back. I'm excited to have this next conversation with Parks Associates Vice President of Research, Jennifer Kent. We just finished our 14th annual Smart Energy Summit. And of course, we have had lots of publishing going on around here at Parks Associates. So lots of new studies that have come out of field and out of our research team. And so really want to spend, the next 20 minutes or so talking to Jen about some of the things she's learned and some of the things I've learned in the past 6 weeks or so at the events that I've attended. So Jen, let's start off and see, can you just maybe sum up the goals of Smart Energy Summit for our audience so they understand the angles there that we're looking at with that event?
Yeah, sure. So Smart Energy Summit, I think this was our 13th or 14th year. Yep. Thank you. I was like, Elizabeth's going to know that number. Doing Smart Energy Summit. And what's really interesting about that conference and what we're trying to do is bring together all of the many companies that are providing connected services to the home, as well as products in the home. So this whole smart home ecosystem, many of you today, internet service providers, device manufacturers, dealers, with those who are working in the energy space. So utilities, energy providers, product manufacturers on that side too, solar storage, EV charging, right? Who oftentimes are going to energy conferences, but not thinking as much necessarily about the integration of the home and, in their terms, being behind the meter, right? And what's really happening in the home. And we know that from our perspective, we really sit in the consumer state of mind, right? A lot of our research brings that, consumer view. How is this impacting the customer at home? How is this impacting the homeowner, MDU residents, and what are the business opportunities at that intersection? So the purpose of that event is to bring these ecosystems together to help spur new ideas and new connections and learn from each other and move that market forward.
Okay, great. And lots of great conversations there to understand the challenges that the utility players are having, and then how, like you said, how they're going to interact in the relationship between some of these manufacturers and other providers in the home. And as we heard from Alarm.com and from the session you just hosted, there certainly is a lot of growth happening around energy solutions and driving demand for smart home products. But let's take a step back. Are we seeing explosive growth? Is that how you would describe the smart home market?
I'd say that from Park Associates' view, the smart home market has long been a slow and steady growth market, right? Everybody, it's a little bit of where you sit is where you stand and what you define as explosive. But in general, smart home products, right, have this slow and steady growth story. There are certain products that jump, like smart speakers, who I mentioned in the previous panel. We don't necessarily categorize them as smart home products, but they're very impactful. They certainly have smart home controls. They're just not in that bucket. We put them in connected consumer electronics because they're mostly used for audio streaming. Very, very strong, quick uptake, and they've plateaued a bit at about 52% adoption. Cameras, video doorbells have the strongest growth today. But in general, these are home products that people also may buy once every 5, every 8, every 15 years, right? Before you thought about smart thermostats, when did you ever buy a thermostat? It came in your house, or you unfortunately had to replace your HVAC system and a new thermostat came with that. And so these are products that don't have the turnover of a consumer electronics device like a streaming media player or a smartphone that you're going to replace every 2 years. And so because of that kind of long product life cycle, one of the reasons that, again, we see year over year growth pretty much we've been tracking home automation for 35 years. But it's generally a strong and steady growth story rather than explosive.
Yeah, and so if you were to maybe talk more specifically about that buyer journey, we're talking about, 20 or so different products within the smart home device category that we're tracking. Can you explain from some of our research how the buyer journey is working these days?
Yeah, sure. So first let's start with channel, right? So traditionally and including still today, consumers mostly the top channel for smart home products is retail, and that might be in store or online. So if you take online only retailers like Amazon, as well as retailers that have a national presence, big box retailers, and their online and in-store sales are the top channel for smart home products. And then security dealers being a very important channel as well. And then depending on the product, you have a very different story of how these products get into consumers' hands. So for smart thermostats, specifically utilities and energy providers have been a channel for getting oftentimes subsidized products into consumers' homes on for something like a camera, doorbell, even smart smoke alarms, that sort of thing. The security channel is going to be stronger. Water leak detectors, you're looking at an insurance channel, right? So the story does change depending on the product category, but in general, we do see online retail and in-person retail being the strongest. Now, from there's a difference between what type of company you're buying from and how you're buying. And this is something that we're seeing shift in the security market in particular. So, traditionally security players through dealers were selling face-to-face, very consultative sale, door-to-door. Let's come and look at your home layout and how many doors and windows that you have and, what sensors that you need, and really customize and design the system for you. And frankly, the DIY players have done a really fantastic job of sort of divorcing the installation method from the sales method, meaning that younger generation consumers are online shoppers first, really. And this, shift towards e-commerce was only accentuated by the pandemic, right? And they don't necessarily want to talk to salespeople, right? They kind of have an idea of what they want. They're very comfortable with understanding what they want in their home. And if you have a well-designed e-commerce engine that helps them play with different packages and add this number of sensors or back down, or even walk you through a question series of what are you trying to do here? Are you more interested in automation or security? Are you concerned about your front door or your garage, right? And creating customized packages online and enabling that sale to happen online, and then giving the customer choice of installation. And that dealer can still provide that installation and the monitoring, right? But there can be a divorcing of the sale versus the install and support. So I do think that we're seeing more companies in the smart home space thoughtfully shift to how they can be doing a better job with a possibly complicated sale online.
And so we're talking about technology basically enabling an expansion of the security system beyond the door, right? When we think of the security channel as a smart home device channel, there's the system, and then there's these add-on devices that are coming into play. Is that what basically all security dealers are doing? And I know we just published our 10th annual security dealer study that tracks and aggregates the responses from dealers in the market. So I'm interested in that point.
Yeah, so security dealers tell us, primarily they're selling systems, right? But there's a big opportunity for selling devices after the sale, right? So we talked a little bit in the last panel about how we even have some dealers, about 16% are selling DIY systems, right? And with professional monitoring, and 17% said that they were selling DIY systems even without professional monitoring, in addition to the pro install systems that they're doing, right? And they see that as an upgradable sale, right? That you're getting somebody in the front door, you're maybe attracting a customer that you didn't have before, and then upselling. In our consumer research, we have some data that complements that, in that we have a study that we recently published about the experience for the customer, the DIY security customer versus the pro security customer. However you got that first system in and installed it, what has your experience been like? Why did you purchase one over the other? What have you done since? And one of the things that was really interesting is the journey of these two groups are different. So in the professional side, they tend to take more devices right up front, right? Oftentimes you're financing that. It's a large sale. Average system sales these days can be between $750 to $1,000. The dealers are saying that their average sale is about $1,000 sale, but it may be financed. And so the consumer's not necessarily paying that all up front, and it's over a contract term or what have you. And because of that, they're taking more devices up front. The DIY system players, you're getting a more basic system, but then you're going back and adding that device and then that device. Also, the devices that they add are different up front. So more likely to take security video-based devices up front and then add a thermostat later. So very much the way that people are thinking about the devices and the system kind of differs on how you first get into the market.
Yeah, and certainly a lot of different doors to basically get to home security solution at this point, right? It can be the system, but it could also be that device. And the dealers, have always been installing the systems. Now they've got these new add-on offerings, right? The thermostat's been around as an offer and add-on for security dealers for a while now, but when you add in solar and storage maybe and EV in the garage, this changes that opportunity quite a bit for the dealer. And so do you see energy as being a big driver to growth, not only for the security dealers, but for the smart home channels in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the major impression I came away with from Smart Energy Summit this year, as well as previous Smart Energy Summits. I love that time to think about energy very specifically, because it's so very clear that maybe not today, but coming, right? There are some major changes that are likely to be happening with how consumers relate to energy and have to be dealing with energy consumption in their home. Frankly, most of our energy costs pre-2022 were relatively low, and consumers, the point that it was almost an inconvenience to think about their energy consumption, and so engagement with energy monitoring plays relatively low. It's not a high enough pain point, right? What we learned from the energy industry is that there is this increasing sort of electrification of the grid, people moving from gas, heat, and other sources to electric heat and cooling. Certainly the electrification of transportation from, traditional gas engines to ICE engines to electric vehicles. And certainly, actually, in our 2021 data, the interest in electric vehicles was sort of off the charts compared to our trending data. And so when consumers have to think about for the first time, okay, I'm going to be charging, my main fuel source for my main part of transportation is actually going to be plugging into the home. Now I really have to think about what plan I'm on. It also is a major issue that there's in the energy space. Utilities and energy providers are trying to understand the impact of the grid, especially even on the local community area, right? So if you have a certain neighborhood that happens to have a lot of EV owners, and can local transformers handle that, right? You've heard a lot about probably growing blackouts and power outages, certainly here in Texas, but in other states as well, due to natural disasters, and again, the growing demand on the grid. And so I think there's a reality, right, that we're going to be hearing more, not less, about solar, home storage, batteries, and how everybody in the home is going to maybe perhaps have an opportunity to work together, have some more coordination, really serve the customer in something that's probably going to be a growing pain point, and certainly a growing pain point on the B2B side for utilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine utilities want to hold, or energy providers want to hold their position as reliable, trusted provider, right? We all expect electricity to be there. I don't even think about it. Although these days you do hear people thinking about it more because they are in blackout or brownout or rolling and whatever's going on with the grid in that moment, depending on where you're at, or perhaps fires or other things going on. So it's very interesting how energy can, and especially with EVs getting added into the grid and the demand that's going to be there, right, to power those cars, and how that's all going to work out.
Yeah, and love to pick up on something you said there that I forgot to mention, really, is a sense of peace of mind, right, for the customer, that if there are more frequent outages, that I'm okay, my family's okay, especially if you're a family with an older person living with you that's on oxygen, right? Or you have temperature sensitive medications or all sorts of things, right? We're seeing there's opportunity, especially for those on the security side, to provide peace of mind benefits, right? To provide consumers with peace of mind about their independence from the grid and their ability to, take care of themselves if they need to in one of these events. In fact, I think the Super Bowl commercial from Ford was sort of aimed that way about their EV. Oh, actually, no, that was kind of a different messaging. But I've seen a commercial from Ford's EVs that's really focused on not so much about the green lifestyle or anything like that, right? There's a day coming where you can power your home, right, with the EV battery, and so the rest of the neighborhood might be out, but I'm providing for my family, right? And that peace of mind messaging crosses over so strongly into what we see in the security and the smart home space, is actually a messaging there that works for electricity too.
Yeah, and that we have other data where consumers are telling us they have a desire to be independent from the grid entirely, or a desire to have energy from renewable sources, and that makes a difference, and there's a willingness to pay for it even. I have a audience question, and then I want to talk about the security forecast, because all of those services that are coming from the system and the devices is a lot of the RMR, and that revenue is of great interest, of course, to our audience here. But let me get you this question, see if you can answer it. How important is invisibility? Best automation is invisible. I pay $10 per month and I can see my front porch, and I don't care about the inner workings, the inside of the home, and that kind of monitoring. So any comments on invisibility?
Yeah, I love that comment, especially for those who were able to watch earlier in our session when I was talking about moving the smart home from early adopters and innovators into kind of the more mass market and the late adopters and laggards, et cetera. This is really where your automation play is so important, because these people are not there for the tech, right? They really don't care how it works. They're there for the benefit, right? So the early people who are already in smart home and see the value are often, right, all of our data says they like tech anyway, right? So they are drawn by the tech and also what it can do. And again, they can easily imagine these benefits. The whole rest of the market that isn't engaged right now in all of that greenfield opportunity, it's automate as much as you can, right? It's the key message is do not make smart home a job for your customer, because those customers don't want it to be a job. They want you to help them. They want to see the benefit. So thanks for that comment. Whoever said that, I love it. Invisibility of the automation for sure. Invisibility of the working.
Yeah, and it does bring up this big point of engagement, and how much do we need consumers to be engaged with these devices and the services, or whether it's all just working. And certainly if we're going to rely on thermostats and solar and the requirement of behavior from consumers to have enough electricity, I mean, we're just going to have to come up with a different solution, because behavior changes and getting people to buy this stuff, integrate it, get it all in, is going to be an uphill battle. So there's going to have to be some other plans to really push the incentives and push demand, which means making people understand the value and wanting it, even regardless of the cost. So I know you presented some interesting data on affordability versus value perceptions, and certainly a big point of if they don't understand the value, it doesn't matter how much it costs, right? They're not going to buy it. So we spent a lot of time in home security. It's a sweet spot for us, and I'd love for you to spend maybe just 5 minutes, right? We have about 5 minutes left to talk about some of the changes in our security monitoring forecast, and whether you see, and I know some of those changes, we got a lot of lines there, things we're counting, and there were reasons behind the changes, but will we see more lines being added in the future? And maybe a big picture view on the professional monitoring side.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So Parks Associates has been sizing and forecasting the professional security market for many years, decades. And this market certainly has shifted in many real and important ways, including, of course, the entrance and great growth of DIY type solutions. Also an expansion of monitoring from systems to devices. Certainly you can have a video doorbell, a camera that you can have professionally monitored. Also an expansion of the ways in which the security industry is making money, right? So it's not just professional monitoring, it's also paid self-monitoring, it's also video storage. And so we have really come out with a new effort to look at the security market in a different way. So forecasting not just security systems, but security solutions. And what we've done this round is to include in that definition security systems, which by definition have a hub or a panel and sensors, whether they be door or window sensors or motion sensors, and then often other devices attached. But a system, as well as households that have a doorbell or a monitoring camera but do not have a system. The reality is certainly those are security plays today. Those in the security industry are competing in some way with those offerings, right? So there's this expansion of households that have security solutions, whether they be system or device-based. And then also thinking about security services and the way that money is made differently, right? So instead of just looking at professional monitoring attached to systems, we looked at 4 different kind of segments: professional monitoring attached to systems, paid self-monitoring, whether that just be essentially alert-based interactivity or video storage and video alerts attached to a system, but then also professional monitoring attached to standalone devices for those households that don't have a system, and self-monitoring and video storage attached to, again, those video doorbell or camera devices that for households that don't have a system. So trying to really expand really and size, and then forecast forward the full sort of security solutions market. And then you mentioned kind of going forward other, big picture ways that we think are important that maybe aren't even captured today are things like lines added for vehicle monitoring that may not be captured by a system. Personal security solutions, whether that be traditional PERS, or we see a lot of movement in personal security solutions for workers who, might be out in the field and need protection, night workers, nurses, realtors, right? People who are out on a job, fitness, people who are sending their kids to school, right? Unfortunately, and the security mindset that comes there. So different lines of monitoring of what a security solution can mean, that's still essentially customer and residential in focus as opposed to commercial. But really an expansion of where, there might be growth.
And what we're talking about a lot of times are incremental revenues that are getting added onto that base service. And while they may seem small in the moment, they end up adding up to a lot and creating a great stickiness with the customer in general, and then serving the bigger purpose around the home security value proposition. So really interesting work that you all are doing. If anybody's interested in understanding more about how we forecast this market, we'd love to share that with you. That's all the time we've got, Jen. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing Parks Associates data and your view on the market. We appreciate your time and look forward to talking again soon.
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth.
So if you give us just a minute, we will be right back. We've got our final session for the day focused on channel expansion. Where's the growth coming from? And we'll be right back in just a minute. Welcome back. I'm happy to be hosting our final session of today's Connections series. We're going to talk a little bit more about where growth is coming from. I have an amazing lineup of speakers here who are going to be joining us and sharing their experience and some of what their companies are working on as we all move to work towards mass market adoption of smart home products. So I want to start here and introduce Aaron and see if he can share a little bit more about Brilliant and his role. So Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. If you could introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Aaron Amy. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Brilliant. Brilliant is the user experience layer for all of the technology that goes into a home. We make the Brilliant Control, which is a wall-mounted control panel that gives you touch and voice control over all of the different devices that you might deploy in a home. For example, if someone's at the door and rings a video doorbell, you'll see the video right there on the wall. You'll be able to talk to them, single tap to unlock the door and let them in with a smart lock. If you want to listen to music, you'll see all the online streaming services right there. You can select them, play it through your Sonos system. If you're going to bed at night, you can turn off all the lights and lock the doors and turn down the temperature with a single tap. It orchestrates all the different technology with no app required in a way that's accessible to everyone's in the space. We make the Brilliant Smart Dimmer Switch, which gives you whole home smart lighting and home automation. And we make the Brilliant Command Center, which allows multifamily owners and operators to deploy and manage technology at scale and capture operational efficiencies with that. We sell to consumers, we sell to hundreds of the top builders in the country in residential new construction, and we sell to multifamily developers and operators as well. We also go to market with a joint security and smart home offering with Resideo through their dealer network. And we do that at a price point that allows every home to be smart and allows every person who's in a home to use the technology seamlessly and effortlessly.
Okay, great. We're so happy to have your perspective here. So thanks for joining us. Mitch Klein, thank you so much for joining us today. You know, love having you on any panel that we host at Parks Associates. So please share with us some of the things you're working on at Z-Wave and Silicon Labs.
Sure. Thank you, Elizabeth. You know, I'm always happy to be here and love participating at the Connections events. And as you can see from, I think you can see from the slide, I got multiple hats. I even brought the hats with me, where I'm wearing the Silicon Labs hat, where I'm director of Alliance Strategies. Silicon Labs is the only pure play semiconductor company. We've got 100% focus on IoT, where we're driving all the key smart home platforms. You may ask, why so many? Well, because platforms are really fit for purpose. And when we talk about that, we're really talking about careabouts, a lot of which we're going to be discussing today, like in-home range, security, bandwidth, battery life, and so on and so forth. My role covers, actually, believe it or not, 17 alliances at last count. But personally, I'm deeply engaged in the top 6 alliances. As you probably know, that's where all the sausage is made. That's how we actually develop the platforms and the technologies that we're going to be talking about today. I'm also wearing the Z-Wave hat, where those who know me, my heart runs deep with Z-Wave, where I've been executive director for 8 years. That's actually now really a volunteer role as my role within Silicon Labs. As you can see here, Z-Wave leads the smart home. And when we say that, we're talking about, we have about a 90% monitored security panel deployment with Z-Wave. And security, as we've talked about in the past, continues to have been the primary driver for smart home. Thus, we say Z-Wave leads with the smart home. Anyway, I'm happy to be here and have this discussion with everyone.
Well, great. And congratulations to Silicon Labs. I think I read y'all exceeded $1 billion in revenue. Is that just announced?
Yes, it's true. We've doubled our revenue in 2 years. And that was after we sold off all of our non-IoT businesses. So yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. Watch the stock. We're doing well.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Benjamin Myers. Ben, welcome to our stage. I'd love to understand a little bit about what you're working on at Kwikset and maybe your view of the smart home market.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I don't know how you follow the godfather of the connected space with Mitch. But no, appreciate you having me on. First of all, just love what you guys are doing with this entire platform, getting a lot of voices together It's been great to watch throughout the day, and I appreciate you having me be a part of it. Kwikset is the leader in lock set hardware. We've been in the connected space for a long time. We have an agnostic play, so we try to play with everybody's systems in the market and try to be of service as much as we possibly can in the connected space. Myself, I'm going on my 20th year with the company, and I am excited as I continue to learn the electronics and connected space as I've been in that role just under a year now. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And congratulations on the tremendous tenure there. So that's some great loyalty they've got. And of course, a powerhouse player here. So interested for sure to hear your view. Stefan, we've got you next. And I love that bringing in your perspective, which of course includes some North America, but a lot of European views as well. And so share with us a little bit about Homey and what you've been working on.
Yeah, sure. Also happy to be here. It's great to be at the Connection event again, like all the other panelists. Very exciting to be here. So I'm one of the founders and commercial director of Atom. We make Homey, and with Homey we make a smart home system and smart home hubs for the entire home, basically to bring together smart home, because there's a lot of different ecosystems. Like Mitch also told, they're all fit for purpose. But that doesn't mean that there's Matter, there's Thread, there's Zigbee, there's Z-Wave, there's proprietary APIs, there's cloud connections. And what we do with Homey is really bring that all together. We've been building smart home and universal hubs in Europe for the past couple of years, 8.5 already. And now we have a solution that is also cloud-based, app only, so you can start without buying any of our hardware. And both that, as well as our new generation of hubs, are also coming to the US. So you'll be hearing from us a lot more stateside as well, next to, of course, Europe, where our next generation products will also be available. So this is what it looks like. We have apps for mobile, tablet, and web. As I said, you can use it app only to connect all your cloud devices in a single place, or you can use one of our hubs to extend that to Zigbee, Z-Wave, proprietary 433, even infrared, Matter and Thread, and really bring together everything into one place for a consumer.
Great. Well, we're excited to hear about your perspective, particularly on the integration of all these different ecosystems, really unifying it for the consumer at home. So thanks for being here. Okay, last but not least, we have got Matt with Avani. So Matt, thanks for joining us. If you could introduce yourself and Avani.
Yep, thanks for having me on the panel. At Avani, we make a technology we call Sensify, which we say enables intelligence for the connected world through providing sensing as a service. The general idea is that any device that has a wireless communication package on board on any of the many protocols provided by various providers, including Silicon Labs, as they talk to each other, people as big bags of water basically disturb those communications. And you can turn that information into sensor data about occupancy in the home and use it for a wide range of purposes like security, lighting control, thermostat setback, etc. And we feel that presence data is essential for the use of automations, because if you don't know something's happened, you can't do anything about it. And because we can deploy it as a service with various OEM partners, it can be deployed to existing ecosystems, enabling them to light up new revenue streams, et cetera, over time. And we think that there's a lot of growth and untapped potential in IoT around this combination of deployed systems as well as back-end services that can do a whole lot of really interesting things for the industry. And so we're excited to be a part of this. Where's the growth coming from? And looking forward to the panel discussion.
Well, great. Thanks for being here. We're looking forward to your contribution. And so let's go ahead and jump into the conversation. I want to start off and talk about sort of big picture stuff, how quickly things are moving, get into the role of technology, a little bit about the value proposition, and of course, the channels and the role of data. So Mitch, I want to start out with you because this first question is really about, are things happening quickly in the smart home? Is this a slow and steady march to mass market? Is there hype right now around the smart home? What's going on?
I can give you the easy answer and say yes. Yes, there's definitely a lot of hype, but there's a lot of meat behind the hype. We've all been talking about some of the initiatives with Matter and some other technologies. So those are being adopted. And yes, of course, it takes time from an alliance that's going to build a platform or build a technology to actually get it from concept to market development to an actual product ready. It could take a couple of 3 years. So from that perspective, slow and steady, no question about it. What we are seeing is, hey, yay, the supply chain is improving. That's not quite there yet. But certainly companies are filling more orders and we're seeing more inventories. So you'll start seeing more products out on the shelves. We're also looking at the different verticals, which are really beginning to drive these adoption. The do-it-yourself, which has definitely had fits and starts, as we know. Interoperability is something we'll be talking about and why that's going to help. The do-it-for-me piece, where we've got professionals, whether the security installers or CEDIA type installers, and of course the ecosystems. Service providers like Comcast and Charter are really starting to drive at least awareness. So that's beginning to happen. Security, Vivint, ADT, and of course the disruptors like Apple, Amazon, Google, SmartThings, and several others. I love what Stefan's doing, by the way, with Homey. So slow and steady, it's going to continue. And I would expect rapid uptake as more and more of the products start to hit the marketplace.
And just a follow-up question on the DIY play. Maybe 5 years ago, everybody thought that DIY might put their system business out of business, right? Or cannibalize the system offering. Do you think that's happening or has happened?
No, and I was the naysayer. I was saying the best thing that can happen to the installer is to have wide adoption of do-it-yourself. Just think about it. Again, the best example is think of like Home Depot or Lowe's. People can go in, you could build a house, with everything that's at Home Depot. Do people build their own houses? No, they might take a little project on. And then you start looking at bigger projects from there. People may have the capabilities to do it. The products may be enabling, but people don't have the time to do it. So this drives interest, drives adoption, and is the best thing for the professionals.
Okay, great perspective. Ben, I want to come to you too. You've got that long history at Kwikset and then maybe a little bit shorter within getting into the electronics and connected side. But where do you see things are in the market right now?
Yeah, so I look at it a little bit more from like a macro perspective. We deal a lot with the building industry. So, with housing starts slowing down a little bit, interest rates ticking up, that doesn't look like it's going to change, dramatically anytime soon. We are starting to see more confidence in the builder space. So as the confidence continues to tick up, we'll see, the channel of the connected products tick up as well. I would also tell you, though, that, when you think about the connected space, a lot of that has to do with the intrusion channel. And as a lot of us know, as times are tough and things can be uncertain, the intrusion space can flourish a bit. And with that comes all of the smart home products and the connected products. And I think that we're going to continue to see growth, not only just in the short term, but the long term as well.
And on the comment about confidence, builders having confidence, do you think that's confidence in the technology or the lock that's connected that they're adding into the house? What do you mean by that?
So just confidence in the market itself, right? Okay. I think that they feel like the home buyers are still there, more than they had maybe expected earlier on in the recession, if you want to call it that. When you're talking specifically just to the smart products, I do think that their confidence is growing. The products are becoming more and more user friendly and easier for them to acquire as we're getting past the supply chain issues. So, both from a home buyer and a technology perspective.
Okay, great. And Aaron, you're doing a lot of work with builders. So do you want to share a little bit about that perspective and the partnerships you have with them, how builders are viewing this market? Are they worried about all the housing? Is smart home just becoming a very big point of differentiation, or should it be part of the standard? for some new home builds?
Yeah, well, I think Ben encapsulated it very well. We do see a good bit of caution amongst builders, and they've pushed out a number of projects. So the deployment has been a little bit slower. The home building itself has slowed down, but at the same time, there's an increase in the adoption of the technology that's going into the new home builds. And a lot of that is driven by the need to differentiate. When you're in a little bit more of a buyer's market and people are able to take their time and pick which house they're going to buy, then it's more important to be able to differentiate your homes. And you can do that by lowering the price. That's the worst way to do it. You can do it by offering various upgrades. And it turns out that smart technology is more cost effective in terms of the value that's perceived relative to the cost of doing it, much more so than putting in granite counters or hardwood floors or what have you. We're also seeing a lot of growth driven by functional areas that drive additional value. So that's smart security plus smart home. That's emergent smart energy. That's home health. That's ESG moving beyond buzzword status, and that's particularly true in the builder channels, not only in multifamily, but also in single family, where they're starting to pay a lot of attention to ESG related topics, particularly the energy side of the equation. And I think all of this is driving growth in that channel.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly energy, as we've been talking about today, we think is going to be, already is, but will be a bigger play even in the future, sitting next to that value proposition of security. Let's see, Aaron, did you have any other final comments on the growth factors that you want to make? Otherwise, we'll ask Matt where he sees growth coming from.
No, I really feel like the growth is driven, steadily across all the channels. And as I said, it's a time of retrenching when you need to differentiate. It actually increases adoption of smart tech. And then as the macro economy shifts and more homes are being sold, you'll see a big uptick there.
Okay, great. Matt, tell us where you all see some of the drivers coming in for smart home technology.
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of growth in the addition of other services on top of existing ecosystem plays. So, you've been potentially selling hardware into the world for, years to a decade, and being able to light those up with a new value proposition that you can charge a recurring monthly fee for based on them generating some new interesting piece of data, making that available as part of a home security play, a utility play, an insurance play. There's a lot of excitement around that. Over the next year, right? Ivani has several OEM partners lighting up, tens of millions of devices that aren't sensors, suddenly turning them into sensors. And when you've got sensors that previously weren't, you can do things like offer a home security offering to a set of devices never designed for that. And so we're seeing lots of OEMs interested in basically monetizing their existing user base. And that'll be a really interesting thing to see how that progresses and sort of engages with the overall smart home industry over the next several years.
Well, yeah, and you're bringing in a really good point here about the hardware as a service play, because there has to be money to support that hardware, right? So that service revenue coming in helps ensure that hardware can get updated and can continue going. And so those services are being developed and introduced are going to become really important, right, to the companies that are have their hardware getting updated and that are connected. So let's talk and move into a little bit more about the platform and some of the technology. So Stefan, I want to come over to you and see if you can share a little bit more about why there's a necessity right here in connecting all these different things, and then maybe talk a little bit about what's going on in Europe versus what you see here in the U.S. And obviously, you're making a move to the U.S., so we'll be watching you guys do that. But go ahead and share some of your experience there.
Yeah, sure. To just quickly get back to the services topic, I think the fact that we're proliferating and building services on top of hardware is a very good thing, because it also allows us, as everyone in the space, to lower the initial cost, because you have this twofold business model that is both hardware, or maybe not even, and also this software subscription fee. I think there's numerous other industries, including smartphones, that have done very well by this. And I do believe that it also helps us make smart home more mainstream. It's also what we do with Homey Bridge, being a lower cost version basically of our universal hub tied to a service subscription as well. When you look at all these different technologies and protocols, like Mitch said in his intro, there is really, they're all fit for purpose, and they all have a different sort of pros and cons. And what we really see, and what also, of course, fuels general smart home growth, is that more and more brands are starting to look toward each other, are starting to get more interoperable and do more together. And there's a couple of things like automation, but also like energy management, that are uniquely suited when several devices and several parts of your house come together in a single smart home system. If you're asking specifically about what's happening to Europe and what's happening also in the more progressive countries in Europe, I think one of the aspects that's really, really hardcore fueling smart home growth is the fact that some countries like Norway are already adopting it mainstream, and a lot of others are looking at dynamic energy prices. And that means hourly energy prices that are known 24 hours beforehand. So that means that regular consumers, any consumer home, has changing energy prices and is kind of acting like a sort of normal, regular wholesale, large supplier / consumer. Also because, of course, people do have electric cars and they consume a lot, and they might have solar panels or other or batteries and can supply as well. And being able to first get insight into that, control it, but also to schedule it and to have your automations run based on both price as well as consumption or generation triggers, I think is something that is really uniquely to having an interoperable smart home, because you need to have these several aspects of your home. Consumers are in different aspects. You needed to tie into services as well. It's, I think, necessary to move to a completely sustainable future where energy prices will be more volatile and demand needs to be steered more, because simply the supply of energy is a lot less steady than we're used to. And it's a development that is now really taking Europe by storm, basically from the north to the south, roughly, with the Scandinavian countries running in front, like they do more often in technologies. And that could very well also be, what a message to come for other parts of the world as well, as everyone's moving towards, more renewable and more sustainable sources of energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you see EV adoption over in Europe really also being a big driver of that need to be energy efficient and understand consumption?
Yeah. It becomes a business case, right? If you have an EV or heat pumps that are real electricity consumers and really, multiple kilowatt hours per day for a single application, it's at that point when, a 20 or 30 or 40 cents difference in price between this hour and maybe in 2 hours really starts to make sense, because it doesn't really matter that much when your heat pump is heating up its buffer vessel, and it also doesn't matter that much at exactly what hour you charge your electric car or your EV, as soon as and as long as it's done when you need it to. And I think that is really something that actually makes a business case of smart homes saving you dollars per day by being able to schedule. And I think that adds another rationale, whereas first it was also a lot into comfort, into convenience, and into maybe emotion, or maybe a more gadget wanna-have vibe, into I'm needing this to save energy, not only save energy, but also schedule it to save money on the same energy that I consume. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody have any other comments they want to make on the platform and the integration? Aaron, I don't know if you want to comment here at all.
Well, I think integration is a key aspect of smart home, because as long as it's a disparate bunch of unconnected services, not only is it a burden on the resident of a home, but also you can't do the kind of orchestration that's needed not only for home automation, but for things like smart energy, as Stefan's just been talking about. That landscape's gotten a lot more complex recently, and there are a lot of driving forces there. If you have systems living in their own silos, it can't deliver on the value proposition. It's critical.
Yeah, Absolutely. Ben, you're taking something that's, typically hasn't had any connectivity. I mean, it's a lock and it works and it's very clear cut. Now you're adding electronics into it. So, tell us how innovation is changing when we're considering locks, and is this now going to be a big expansion from locks, and adding in these other devices that bring it all together to provide all that added value?
Yeah, sure. So, I think in general terms, the value prop is becoming more and more clear to the common user for smart home in general. I think overall, the promise the technology makes is, let's make your life easier, safer, healthier. How do we save you time, put more money in your pocket, right? And tech is solving all of those needs. When you look at it from a door hardware perspective, we're trying to make life easier, but we have to be careful too that we don't put too much into one lock, right? So there are a lot of companies out there that are trying to cram every single possible technology into a lock. We look at it more as, what's the use case? What does the consumer want? What does the enterprise want? And we try to make our hardware match those needs.
And how challenging is the support role that has to be played in case of any technical issues? Is that something you all constantly think about, or you don't have to because everything works so well?
Yeah, no, we definitely take that into consideration. There's a big tech service department to make sure we're working with both the consumers as well as the professional channels. I would tell you that we rely heavily on our partners. We try to make as much of our products, as I mentioned in the beginning, agnostic to work with all the different systems. With that comes a lot of learning, and how do we make our products even better for the users. I would also tell you too that a lot of companies are focused on that backward compatibility and making sure that as we move forward with the technology, it can exist in the previous and existing systems.
Okay, great. A reminder to our audience, we are taking questions. So if you have any, please put them in the chat or the Q&A. Before we talk about video analytics and video verification and sensors, I want to maybe just briefly talk about voice, right? There were some rumors perhaps that maybe Amazon would kill Alexa, right? And because of there's a lot of changes that Amazon has had to make due to the market conditions, and as many companies are having to make at this time. We don't think that will happen per se, because there's just been so much investment made into this. But tell us, what is the role of voice? We talked about voice a lot 3 to 5 years ago. It was every conversation had voice in it. Now it's kind of like a standard thing, right? All these connected products are almost expected to have a voice controller that works, or an integration with any one of these smart speakers that would enable that control function. So Mitch, did you want to comment on this one?
Sure, I can jump on it. The challenge with voice is the same challenge we've had with connected devices for years, right? They're connected, they're not smart. So the way the voice works is you have to remember how to turn the lights on in the bedroom. Do you have to say, is it Alexa, is it whatever it is? Do you have to remember to say the room? Are we each saying it a little differently? So there's a higher level of intelligence that needs to be built into voice. And I think that challenge has been proven out when you start seeing the studies that show that the top commands are more about, adding something to your shopping cart, replacing something you just use in your refrigerator. So voice has definitely been proven to be valuable, but not to the extent that ultimately it should be, where it should become more situational or conditional. It'll know what time of day it is. It'll know what time of year it is. So when you walk in, you say, Alexa, turn on the lights. It's going to know that you're in the Northeast. It's 4:30 p.m. It's in the wintertime, so it's dark. Those types of conditional is all going to happen as we slowly move from connected to smart, and voice will continue to play an important piece of that.
Yeah, absolutely. All very good points there. Does anybody else want to comment on the role of voice in the controller? Yep, Aaron, go ahead.
Sure. I think that voice has an important role in the system, but it is and always will be, regardless of how good the technology is, a complementary control modality. It's not well suited to be the primary modality for several reasons. First, it's not discoverable. This is what Mitch was touching on, and I don't think you can make it fully discoverable just by making it smarter, because you still have to know what are the capabilities that are present. You know, how do I talk about things in this house in a way that it can understand? Second, it's intrinsically slower than a visual interface. It'll never be a good way of thinking, I'm in a weird mood. What music playlist of my 100 playlists am I interested in playing? It's also not good for things that have a closed feedback loop, like setting the exact volume of music playback or the exact dimming level of a light. I think there are just some intrinsic limitations, even if we assume that the technology itself becomes perfected over time, that mean that a visual interface is always a better primary modality, and that it'll continue to operate to occupy an important place as a secondary interface modality.
Really good points there. Matt, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I'll jump in on that with voice being, it's good as a control modality, but I think what we've found, at least at Avani, is like the best way of experiencing a home is just walking in and it does the things you want it to do, right? You walk in, your lights turn on, your thermostat sets to the right level, all that fun stuff. And that's kind of ultimately where it needs to get to. And I think there's an interesting bit around the integration of all these disparate systems in that, they are built around treating all kind of sensors and inputs as equals, and they're not all equals. And I think that's a really interesting thing that the industry really needs to start paying, I think, a little bit more attention to. You've got, a PIR from vendor A, a PIR from vendor B, Sensify data related to the convenience use case, Sensify data from a security use case, and they all sort of are tried to shimmed into this, hey, occupancy, right? And they are all treated the same way. But as everyone knows, if you walk into a room with a security-based PIR that might be a little slower, more certain, that's not going to be a great user experience from a lighting control perspective. But if you tie a lighting control PIR for your security system, you're going to get false positives. And so that knowledge of what the system what individual systems can bring to an overall system perspective and how those play together is going to be a really interesting area of how different parties play with each other as they try and bring the intelligence level of a home up from just a collection of smart gizmos. And you start to say, okay, my eyes are this good, therefore I'm going to pay attention to it this way. My ability to sense this thing is this good, so therefore I'm going to do that. And there's always going to be a place for those manual inputs, but I think ultimately that voice is going to draw back and perhaps be used more as an input sensory item than it is as a primary method of control.
Yeah, I agree with both Aaron and Matt on that. To quickly jump in, we also see that as soon as people add more sensors and get more comfortable with a more automated home, the automation really takes on, and voice and manual controls, whatever, if it's voice or it could be, mobile widgets or smartwatch, they move a little bit more to the background. And I think what Aaron said very well is that voice was already not really suited as a primary interface because of its indiscoverabilities and inherent limitations. And then when you take a step further with sensors, it moves to the background again. So I think it's a very nice in between there, and it's also a very nice interface to get people more interested about it. But the real importance and the role is, I think, will always stay a little bit more with maybe an ad hoc manual command, and maybe some in between homes that are a little bit moved past only visual, but have not yet moved into full automation yet. And it's a limited, and I think a more limited area than most people assumed back when it was introduced.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because the role of voice is really dependent on the one person or maybe the couple people in the house using it, and they might all be different. I actually had a guy the other day I was talking to, and And he asked me why we didn't consider a smart speaker as a smart home device. And I said, well, its primary function as a speaker and its top usage is to play music. And he said, well, not in my house. I said, well, yeah, not in your house, but across 10,000 households, you know, controlling your smart home device is actually pretty far down the list, right? It's after streaming music, and then I think it's asking the weather. There is online ordering, even people buying things, you know, before they might use it as a controller for their device. So, you know, the things are evolving, and how an individual or a family might go about using the stuff in their home. I mean, it's very personalized, right? And pretty much everybody's going to be different in a lot of ways. So I want to take a few questions that we've got from our audience, and then we will continue. And I'd like to talk about Matter a little bit in perspectives there. But first, let's go here. Here's one question. Interested in if and how the panel is proactively trying to attract totally different buyer types like older consumers. So if we're thinking about consumer segments buying these products, how are we getting perhaps some of these older demographics engaged with these kinds of solutions? Does anybody have a good answer for that one?
I think specific to older consumers, I think sometimes there's a little bit of a misconception about how technically sophisticated older consumers are. And maybe I'm just personally touchy on it as I'm getting older. But I think that a generation ago, the people who were in the older demographic had grown up without any computerized technology in their daily life. So it was perhaps a harder transition for them. But I think now computers have been a part of our lives for long enough that the older demographics are actually staying a lot more current than people give them credit for, and are a lot more comfortable with technology than people assume.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think older consumers from our data show that there's an expectation, in fact, for technology to help them and to help them around safety and security and independent living. We show 25 million households in a caretaker role, or that will be in a caretaker role in the next 5 years. And 21% of that group went out and bought something, independent living solution during the pandemic time. So as you noted, these, you know, generations are growing up, and now, like the younger people, you know, they have the phone attached like everywhere all the time. Even all of us do too, if we have to admit that, right? Any other comments on older population segments that anybody wants to make? Ben?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So, you know, I think as Aaron said, like the older generation is still pretty tech savvy. They are purchasing smart home devices to make their lives easier. So whether it's access control, whether it's monitoring from a safety perspective, whether it's making it easier for them if there's an emergency to get help, that generation is embracing the technology. I would also tell you, you know, the manufacturers out there are also focused on the younger generations too, right? So while they're very tech savvy, they don't necessarily like to do the hard work. They don't want to do the meaning of like the installs, right? So you've got a lot in that generation of either to do it with me or to do it for me. So how do you make installs of the smart products easier for that particular generation?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point as well. One other question that we've got here is basically how to get consumers to want to buy this, and that process there with the selling, whether it's merchandising, whether it's the direct partnerships. You know, what are things we can share with our audience about some of the pain points that come in with selling smart home solutions? Any lessons learned of, well, we tried it this way, that didn't work, so now we're going to do it this way, and that's working better. You know, these things happen all the time to pivot and figure out where that market is. So anybody want to comment on those two questions?
I'll say we need to move from selling products to selling solutions. And I think that's really the trend. Again, kind of tying in that last question to this question about, you know, getting, you know, older consumers. older consumers, if you ask them, has technology made your life better? I don't know that you'd get a good answer to that, because technology in many ways just simply confuses people. So if we start selling solutions, and again, we're starting to see that at this point, but instead of just buying a sensor, or instead of just buying a light switch, you're buying a solution of not coming home to a dark home, right? And the parts that are needed to make that happen are all part of this package. We have experimented with that approach from the Z-Wave Alliance perspective, but because we're building the chip and not the end devices, we can only influence that approach so much. But I think as we talk with some of the other panelists here, they're going to also acknowledge the fact that solutions are the way to go.
Yeah, I think what is really challenging with that is that you have to pitch the right solution at the right time to the right consumer. And I think because we need to move from products to solutions. I mean, not to say you sound like a broken record, Mitch, because you definitely don't, right? We all know that. But it has been said for like 7 or 8 years now. And what I think is really tricky, and I think we need to strike sort of balance, at least that's what we have found, between inspiring with use cases and inspiring with stories and inspiring with scenarios or flows or automations, and then showing the products that come with it. Because in the end, you do see that people end up buying products, but they should be guided towards which products make which solutions. So you're showing them the solution so that they can figure it out themselves. And of course, some starter kits, they help also because they have a lot of inspiration. And I think that's really key. And I think we're far from figuring it out completely, because as a whole smart home market, we have so many cool solutions and use cases to sell to now or to show. But the question is, who do you show it at what time, right? Because just listing 25 use cases, no one's going to look through it. They're going to they maybe read the first 2 and then I think of, oh, this can do a lot. Okay, I get it. And then they move on with their lives. And I think it's really, really hard. And I think that would be the really next step. And actually more consumer interaction. So trained sales staff in retail or dedicated sales channels, or maybe even over the phone, or maybe advanced chatbots or wizards, but nobody likes wizards again, but some sort of solution there that can guide people to the right use case and the right solution for them. I think who cracks that, they really hold all of the smart home sales in their hands.
Yeah, we're finally getting to the enabling technologies, right? We've been talking about the solutions. We haven't necessarily had the solution to the solutions. And so we're starting to get there, right?
Well, in the labor side of it on retail, right, you have to have somebody who can help explain the products perhaps, or if you don't have the labor force or want them to pay them, maybe you have some fancy setup with a video explanation that can take the place of a human, right, in explaining the value there for a customer to understand that. And we've seen those experience kind of shops popping up, right, on the smart home, and we think that it is true that once people experience it, they like it, right? I didn't want a doorbell until my kids were talking to me through the doorbell, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see what this can do. And I wasn't, I really didn't even think about it like that. But they get home every day and they talk to my husband or I through the doorbell, right, to say they've gotten home, and that changed my view on the connected doorbell, right? I didn't really need it otherwise, although probably for our packages we do, because the online delivery is real in our house. Let's
Elizabeth,
go ahead.
Just make one other comment. One of the other things that I read a lot about, and something that we do somewhat well in our company, but I see a lot of others doing this too, is QR codes in retail environments, right? So it takes them right from their phone to the videos, explains some of the use cases. And then taking that a step further is the instructions, right? So previously, how was I going to install it in my home was a pain point. And now it's a video walkthrough step by step. It's very simple. And that's been a nice bridge, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that's a key part of the retail environment now, is if you can facilitate that, whether with QR codes or with other technologies that enable more interaction in retail environment, that's great. Consumers are doing that anyway. worst case, they're Googling it, they're reading online reviews, they're making a decision that's a combination online, offline endeavor in retail now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's funny because there's like been a revival of QR codes, right? With the pandemic that, and people know, I mean, if you go to a restaurant, right, for a lot of places, you don't get a paper menu anymore, right? Or they might have it, but they definitely have the QR code there that goes direct to the menu. And so that behavior even is showing up in all sorts of other places just for consumers to know they can get information that way. So that's a great point to bring up. We can't have this conversation without talking about interoperability and Matter. And so Matter came out and has got lots of products that are incorporating Matter into it, and there will be a Matter mark that is placed on products to show that they are Matter compliant. And so, Mitch, I would love for you to maybe give us a little view here. Is Matter going to save the smart home? That's what we've heard a little bit. Is this another standard that is at this point the best thing that we've got to bring it all together and being embraced? Would love to hear your views on this, Mitch.
Well, does the smart home need to be saved? I guess I'd have to ask that question. So no matter which hat I wear, I have to say we're really excited about Matter. The Z-Wave Alliance has been promoting and pushing the concept of interoperability for over 20 years, as well as backwards compatibility. So this is key, because once a consumer puts in a door lock, they're not going to buy another one in 9 months because another platform comes out. You might replace your cell phone every 6 months or every year, but you're not going to replace your door lock every year. So anyway, so interoperability is key. And what Matter has enabled is to get awareness within the manufacturing side and the companies that were focused on their walled gardens, if you will, to all agree that the way to drive the smart home, not save it, but to drive the business, is to actually come out with yet another platform that's going to enable devices to work together and to do it seamlessly. And so even though it's going to take a while for the product quantities to get out there, the intelligence behind the way it's designed, some of that won't be aware, or consumers won't be aware for some time, such as the hooks that are made to enable interoperability with non-Matter products like Z-Wave and Zigbee. You can't expect hundreds of millions of devices in the marketplace to go dark and no longer work. And the teams that put together the Matter specifications understood that and built in the hooks to enable this. And companies like Silicon Labs and others are going to, make that available so that your existing products will continue to work. And now you can leverage some new products from Matter manufacturers, or you can still continue to use your Z-Wave and your Zigbee devices as well. So, I mean, this is a lengthy conversation. I don't want to take up the full time behind it, but the thing that I like also very much about it, and I know Ben is going to definitely agree with this one, is that when you build your door lock, Ben, you have to build a version for Bluetooth, you have to build one for Z-Wave, you have to build one for Zigbee. So you're taking the exact same product and building 5 different versions of the same product. So if you don't have to do that, now you can build one. You've now freed up your engineering team to innovate. So we're going to see not just more products, but we're going to see a lot more innovation because of that. Back to you.
Yeah, fully agree with that statement.
Any other views on Matter?
Sure. I think Matter, is an important standard for all of the reasons that Mitch has been laying out. It's important to know, what it is and what it isn't. And Brilliant as a member of the CSA, we're believers. We love it. We have a large engineering team that works largely on these integrations, and it's great if they can be working on other things as well. but it still doesn't address the experience of using the technology. And that user experience is actually what we spend more time on than the actual integration by far. It also doesn't address what are the business relationships that are needed in order to go to market effectively with partners. It actually simplifies the business relationships a lot in that today there's a regime where you have to build a relationship with every single company that you integrate with, and then you have to stay on top of the changes in the interfaces and so on. Having that be standardized can help with that a lot. But still, the value of going to market with partners, as we do with Resideo, as we do with a number of other partners, is incredibly valuable. And Matter is a really good foundation for a lot of other things that it doesn't solve all problems in interoperability and in user experience.
I think that's spot on. Matter is a really good foundation, and it will start out, especially in the next coming years, as another standard because there's so much Zigbee, Z-Wave, and whatever still around. And of course, that won't necessarily also be pushed away because they're fit for purpose, and some are just lower cost or more efficient or longer range or better. Or have different bandwidths, which make them more ideal for security situations. But I think it lays very good groundwork for all these more of walled gardens and closed ecosystems that did have some sort of way to interface with a Brilliant or with Homey, but it required direct relationships with every single manufacturer to open up those APIs and make sure that it works and it stays working. I think for that it is great, and I think it's also going to be very interesting to see what those companies are going to build on top of Matter with customized commands and customized capabilities to not become a commodity. And I think there's a lot of innovation going there because indeed the foundation is laid, and if the foundation is standardized, everyone can innovate. You can innovate with new looks, you can innovate with better and new features, you can innovate with better and new interfaces, with energy management, with automations, with all the cool stuff that we're doing, instead of spending a lot of time building relationships and getting foundational stuff right that should have been standardized because you wanted to work together, right? I mean, that is what everyone wants in the end, especially from a consumer point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, did you have any comments on this subject?
Yeah, I mean, I think it serves as a great kind of foundational layer, but one thing that always, I guess, concerns me with standards, I come from a bit of a DoD background, and if you have this wonderful standard that lets everything talk to itself, really well, you have the ability to kind of get off pace, right? So, Matter offers a lot of capability for systems to talk to each other, but can also lead to people expecting these overall scenarios that have worked for years to work the same way in Matter as they did in a closed ecosystem. And if you've gone to like a variety of manufacturers and tried to piecemeal your system together, we can't expect a consumer to be an expert on all the things. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see how the standards committees kind of approach that problem and challenge, and what that means with regards to different kind of use cases potentially being broken and what that feels like for the consumer. One of the interesting parts about adding kind of Sensify technology to platforms is, there's been a lot of talk around this like Wi-Fi motion arena, and that's been touched on the market from time to time, but we have to overcome that. It hasn't lived up to the promise based on the fact that like it's designed around this kind of massively interoperable system. Whereas when we come in, work with an OEM and kind of their closed ecosystem to then expose that data kind of more globally, it's a product that just works better. And so that kind of balance of, you have to nail the simple things so that people don't go, oh, well, if you can't do the simple thing, then why am I even thinking about the hard thing? And so I think those kind of straightforward, simple use cases really have to be like, locked in. Otherwise, you're going to lose the consumer. And I think that aspect of it is something that Matter really has to help address, and is, I think, where a lot of the benefit of kind of starting in those nice, tight, the doorbell example you gave, right? That's a wonderful way of like, oh, I've experienced this. It worked for me. It's beautiful, right? But if I start with, do I know exactly where, my parents are in the home at every moment in time, that might be like a really far step for a lot of people. And if you expect that to just work out of the box, you might want to call a professional in at the moment, right? And so I think balancing all those different pieces out between standards and closed ecosystems is going to be really interesting over the next several years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, ultimately, this is all about the consumer experience, right? Because they're the buyer. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why Parks Associates is ultimately so focused on that experience and how it goes and the purchase intentions and the reality of adopting these products along with the why behind it. So really, really great comments. It's amazing how quickly an hour can go by because we only have a few minutes left. And I want to give you all the opportunity to answer the last question I've got about what's going to be different 1 year from now. And I mean, gosh, there's so many things that are different if you think of where we were last year or the year before. Things change these days in amazing ways. So would love to hear a brief answer on that. And Matt, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Mitch next.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think there's going to be a lot of occupancy data that's going to show up with technologies like what we have with Sensify, lighting up existing ecosystems, and it'll be fascinating to see what happens when there is a proliferation of what's going on in the home and all the different things that can be done with that, from insurance to security to marketing data, et cetera, and tying all those different pieces together and building some really cool and interesting experiences that, honestly, I can't say we can predict all of them right now, but I think it'll be fascinating to see what comes next.
Absolutely. Mitch, let's go to you.
Yeah, no doubt data. I'll use a term, I'll call it availability. A year from now, we're going to see some of these enabling technologies available. We've been talking a lot about Matter, but you haven't seen a whole lot of it yet because it takes time to get to market. We've seen some of the long-range technologies that have been discussed and made available. You're going to start seeing products with it. So I'll say a year from now, we're going to have a lot more of these products and technologies available to be able to drive the use cases that we're talking about today.
Awesome. Great comments. Ben, let's go to you, and then Stefan and Aaron, we'll close out with you at the end.
Yeah, so when I think about a year from now, I'm interested to see what companies are still in the smart home space. I think there's going to be a lot of M&A over the next 12 months. Are companies going to partner together and really take things to the next level? And who are those companies going to be? I think we might see some of the newer players really take off, as well as some of the established players take things to a whole new level.
Yeah, those are great comments and really good points too, especially in the kind of market dynamics that are going on and interest rates. And so any companies with a lot of debt right now are going to be having a hard time, right? Stefan, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, sure. I believe in a year there will be three things that will be quite different from now. So first of all, you would see more and more services on smart home proliferate, pushing down initial hardware purchases, but also offering additional value, because we know, we're starting to unlock them now in our products, and that will be much more mainstream to also adopt as the basis of hardware is being laid. Obviously, there will be a lot of Homey in the US, which is new. And for you guys, experience Homey on the other side of the ocean. And of course, we will see a lot more energy management and a lot more energy scheduling being very prominently into smart home, because if you look at the rate that dynamic pricing is being adopted, it's just ridiculous. There are some countries that already half of all their inhabitants have dynamical pricing, because it makes sense from a risk-averse point of view for everyone involved, as that you just skip a lot of overhead there in energy companies and utilities. And that is going to be a way more important driver to smart home even than it is right now.
Great. Really good points there. And Aaron, last but not least, certainly.
Well, I don't disagree with any of the specifics that people are bringing up, but since I'm going last, I'll get a little philosophical. I think that those of us who are close to the evolution of technology tend to systematically overestimate the changes that occur in a year And at the same time, we systematically underestimate the changes that happen over larger timescales in a decade or so. And that's why you really have to be in this for the long haul. I think that 1 year will be evolutionary down all the paths that everyone's been talking about. But if you wait in a decade, it'll be revolutionary. Some of the things that we're talking about will have come to pass in the ways that we imagined. Some of them will not have. The ones that will have will actually have a more profound impact than we're imagining today, because it'll have a lot of second order effects that we're only maybe thinking about conceptually and not fully understanding the degree of change that will happen. And then also there are things that will have happened in a decade that we haven't thought of yet, even though we're building the foundation for it today.
Really, really great points there, Aaron. I love that philosophizing there at the end with the near and long-term future. And I mean, it's a good point just to make that smart thermostats were introduced in 2007, I believe, by Ecobee. Our data, which we've been tracking that since they were introduced into the market, you know, we're at 16% adoption, right? After 15 years. I mean, it's slow right now still. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll be reporting on how these different products in the smart home and the connected home, right? We're tracking everything going on with entertainment, video services, streaming, Netflix, broadband. And let me tell you, it's crazy over there what they're going through, the change and the disruption and the money, right? The money lost in translation or in transformation is big. So I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining me in this conversation. You bring a wealth of knowledge. We know your time is very valuable, so we appreciate you being here and your support of Parks Associates research and events, and certainly hope to see you in May at Connections in the Dallas area.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, well, great. So that was a great session. And I just want to remind our audience that we are constantly looking to help educate the market. We do this in so many different ways, including our virtual sessions that we're hosting across our different events. But we also produce white papers on behalf of our clients to help inform and educate on different topical areas. We also have a podcast you can listen to. We're very active on social media, especially LinkedIn and Twitter. And so please follow us there as well. I would like to also thank our sponsors of the Connections Conference for their support, and a reminder that we are co-locating our Connected Health Summit with Connections. This is going to bring a great opportunity for health and home, and especially on the monitoring side, to understand where things are going in the future as it relates to healthcare and the intersection with smart home solutions. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope to see you in May.
you.